So call the meeting to order. Is there a motion on the clerk general?
So moved. And yes.
Yes, and there's a couple of requisitions in the packet.
There's 4. And yes.
There's one for $1 too. Boy, that's a big one. What's that about?
That's an easement.
It's
It's an easement.
yeah.
I'll move to accept the requisition, particularly the $1 one. I don't think
All
I've seen
right.
the $1 one.
It's very frugal. And yes. Okay, first up, we have Chris Broush for a work session relative to the Morrow Area Sewer Service.
Updated copies of today's presentation.
Oh, okay.
So what I handed out today are updated slides that we potentially could go over today. So this is really a continuation from our meeting back in December where we talked about sewer service in the Morrow area. Back in December, we talked about some of the challenges we're facing in this area. We talked about the history of the development of of sewers in Morrow. We talked about, how we initially ran sewers to the old part of Morrow through an assessment project. And then we walked through the timeline of the expansion of that sewer system area. It was expanded in 2 phases to include the Hamilton Township area and then also the Woodlands of Morrow. We walked through some of the challenges we have based off of the high flows that we see out there and the issues of storm events. When it rains, we have a lot of infiltration coming into the sewer system. Our pumps run a long time. We talked about some of the growth that's going out in that area, the developments that are ongoing, including the Woodlands of Morrow, Classic Way, Village of Classic Way in Hopewell Valley. So we talked about all that area. So, and then we presented to the board, at the end of the presentation, we presented the board with some recommendations moving forward. And some of those recommendations included the improvements that we're doing right now in the infrastructure, how we're doing a project with its outdoor enterprise for the cleaning of the force main. We talked about we talked about how we purchased the property at Hazen for potential expansion of our pump station, how we completed recently the sewer master plan with Black and Veatch, and then we had some recommendations moving forward. Those recommendations included potentially putting in an additional capacity fee in the Morrow area. We talked about maybe putting some restrictions as far as growth goes. We talked about the challenges of Woodlands Morrow. So what I'd like to do today, and I'm open to it, we need to continue that discussion. I can walk you through some of the slides to refresh the memory, because it's been 5 months since we talked about this. I can walk you through some of the slides to bring, to review the topic again, and then we can talk about the recommendations. We have with us today representatives from the Village of Morrow, also Joe Pruce with Pruce Construction, who owns the Villages of Classic Way, and we have representatives from the Woodlands of Morrow. So I'm happy to do whatever the board would like at this point.
Well, thanks for including at least the first slide deck into our packet. So it was helpful to be able to refresh my memory around the December meeting. Can you just spell out for me, I know that this is an ongoing challenge in this particular area of the county, notwithstanding the potential new development that's going on. What is it that brings you here today? Is there a decision that's imminent that in order for things to move forward, are there property owners that are waiting feedback from you in order to proceed? What is bringing you here today?
There is a milestone that we hit recently, and it was a letter from the Woodlands Amaro requesting that they can proceed forward with their project. And at this point, the Woodlands Amaro has completed over 500 homes, platted homes in the development. And the previous board back probably 20 years ago had put a limitation on the Woodlands Amaro, saying that you have authority to build up to between 500 to 550 homes. Once you hit that limitation, then that project can't move forward until additional capacity is constructed in the sewer system. That was the view of the board 20-some years ago. So I received a letter from the Woodlands Amaro developer asking to proceed forward beyond the capacity that they were allotted. And so that's the reason why we're here today, is because I have a request from the Woodlands Amaro, and I don't have authority to authorize them to move forward.
And so, can you talk about that particular project, since that's the kind of reason that brought you here? And again, I understand it's a much bigger challenge, and I see there's other representatives here for different developments, so I get that it's a bigger challenge, but can you talk to me about that specific project and where they are, both in terms of what they've built out relative to the whole proposal, and where has that whole proposal been platted or approved by RPC and the board? Can you share a little bit of that with me?
Yeah, I can try. So the development, the developer can correct me about the development, but it has roughly somewhere around it has an approved plan that was approved by the Village of Morrow, because Village of Morrow has the zoning and the planning. It's within the Village of Morrow. The development is inside the Village of Morrow. The development has approximately 850 homes. Is that 840 homes? And right now, you are probably at 580 homes? Yeah, 585 homes. So they're roughly 65% complete on the development. And they're ready to proceed forward with additional homes. They, historically, they have had roughly somewhere around 60 to 90 homes a year that are constructed, completed out there.
That was at our peak. It's less than that on average.
So now you're probably around 40 to 50 homes a year. And it's been pretty consistent. The product that they put out there is a nice product for entry-level homes. So you see a lot of young families who are trying to live in the county and work in the county, move out there. So there's a demand for it, even though the economy has caused a slight recession in the housing market. So we're seeing a slight dip in the housing market with building starts. That area seems to have some resiliency, and I think it's because the product that they put out there, because obviously you have a lot of residents who would like to work and live in the county, and this is probably one of the few areas that allow starting families to do that. So I think we're going to continue seeing additional demand out there. The construction materials they use are relatively they're building to our current standards. So this area, when we did the study back with Black and Veatch, it does show some inflow and infiltration, but pretty much all subdivisions do. It's pretty standard for what we see now in current construction.
I thought you had talked about a serious capacity issue in Morrow and backflows and overfills, especially during certain storm events.
Yes.
That, I mean, you're talking about construction materials and homes. I thought we were talking about the sewers and the problems related to those.
It is. I mean, we have serious issues out there, we have pump stations that run 24 hours during a storm event for probably 2 or 3 days on end. We have our sewer system that backs up and is full. So any additional construction out there is a concern of ours during these storm events. During normal dry weather events, our sewer system works fine. We're able to convey the flow, but during these storm events, that's problematic for us.
So if we were to stop, hypothetically, all future development in this area, would you have a need to improve the infrastructure as it exists today?
We may be able to skate by, but it would be tough.
Can you tell me what that means? Could you talk more about that?
We're still going to have sewers that are full during storm events, rain events. The hydraulic model that Black and Beach put together, the model shows that we have sanitary sewer surcharging when it rains 1.5 inches, and then it's showing, the model shows that we have sanitary sewer overflows in certain manholes down there, which is bad during rain events that are, I think, around 2.5 inches. So when we have a huge storm event, the model showing that we have serious problems. And so stopping construction is not going to prevent that from happening.
So we have to do something about that.
So yes, that's so we have a series of projects that we're undertaking. We're cleaning the force main. We have, looking at trying to do repairs of our collection system to reduce inflow and infiltration. We have some sewer lining projects, that we're looking into. We're looking at camera, cleaning the sewers, doing point repairs, trying to reduce inflow and infiltration.
I don't understand the issue with the woodlands. Now, that's in Morrow, correct?
That is in the Village Morrow, that's
And
correct.
Morrow does its own zoning and all that stuff,
That's
right?
correct.
And they have, the zoning is complied with by this developer according to Morrow zoning, correct?
Yes, as far as I
Okay.
know.
And so, and we don't have anything to do with that, and apparently this particular development is anticipated to have how many total homes when it's complete?
It's 800 and
You say, is it 889?
840.
840, because it said, you said in page 5 or page 3 of your thing, it said 889 additional single-family residential homes. And actually, it's not that, it's something different, and that's the total, that's not additional to what's already been done. Because then the next slide you say is 585 lots have been platted or are being built.
Commissioner Grossman, what slide would that be?
Well, it's on page 3 of the material you just handed out, and it seems
Slide 5
5, 5. And so I just want to first understand your slide, and what information you're conveying.
So this is back in 2006, when the property first was developed. It's entitled, it encompasses 425 acres. It was known as the Alpine property. And back in 2006, at this point, it's like 880 lots. That's the full development, 880 lots. Originally, I think the plan was over 900 lots, 950 lots. The developer scaled that back to, the number that you see in this slide is based off the developer. It actually should be 880 lots.
Okay, but let me stop you right there. And now, are you saying that they've already actually platted all of 585 lots have been platted?
Yes.
And many of those are being built, have some been built?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there's 585 platted lots. The majority of those have been built.
Okay, so now then the next slide is slide 6, I guess, which is a letter that is so small I can't read it. I can't even read it there.
Right, so it's a letter that basically, this letter dates back to 2006, and there's a lot of negotiations that went back and forth between the county and the
Well,
developer.
what is, tell me what the letter says. What does it say?
The letter basically says that the developer understands the issues that we have out in the Morrow area. They understand the sewer issues, the capacity issues, and they agree, this is back in 2006, that they would build up to between 500 and 550 lots, and at that point, they would not proceed forward until there's additional capacity.
Okay, so what is this legal significance of this letter, Bruce? I mean, the zoning.
Very significant.
What that, okay, so.
Very significant.
So that's what I want to
They-
understand.
They were put on notice, this is the follow-up letter. You have the prior letter from Mr. Reniker, who was the county sanitary engineer. Regardless of your comments, headed towards the village of Morrow having jurisdiction over zoning and planning, the village of Morrow basically ignored what the county told them in a letter dated 2004 from Dick Reniker. This letter's dated September 10th that you can't read of 2004. Mr. Reniker had sent them a letter 2 days previously, the developer that is, and the village of Morrow was also told this. We don't have the capacity for this, and you proceed at your own risk. And this is the developer replying, say, we agree with Mr. Reniker and understand that our final record plat should not be approved if we exceed 500 to 550 lots available, and have not obtained additional capacity, and that's where we are today. And the village of Morrow is here, and I don't know if anyone was around at that time or not. But this developer at the time perhaps is not one and the same, but it's his son and his wife, is my understanding, so, who's the current developer. So they proceeded at their own risk, and that's what the significance of this letter is.
And Bruce, wasn't it, if I remember correctly, wasn't this very contentious back in the day where it was township and they were told no, they wanted high density, they annexed into the village, and the village said, yeah, let it rip, build as many as you want, and we were consistently saying, we don't care what your zoning says, we don't care if you put multifamily out there, there's only so much capacity, only so much room at the end, we don't have the sewers. Period, end of story. So if Morrow wanted to allow 800 or 8,000 homes out there, they need to go construct their own sewer plant,
Correct.
period.
All right, so now, I want to make sure I understand that. So, is the responsibility of providing additional capacity by us not something that we're legally required to do, Bruce? We don't have to build out our capacity to meet their demand?
Correct.
Okay, so, given that fact, and given the fact that Morrow, just like any other incorporated jurisdiction which is not within the jurisdiction of the county, we as county commissioners don't control Morrow. We do have a agreement, I guess, to provide sewers with them. Is that right, Bruce?
I don't know what that, I mean, it's our territory for sewer because they don't have sewer.
I'm not aware of an agreement.
Okay, well, so that's what I'm trying to get at. How does it work that, or is the reason why we're providing sewers in this area is because we're providing sewers in areas that originally were unincorporated?
No, this has always been incorporated. It was incorporated when Morrow.
So why
when
are we
extended sewers
providing
through here.
sewers to this area? Did we have some sort of a contract to provide sewers? Did we enter into some sort of agreement related to
This
providing
goes back
sewers?
to 2008 or 1980s.
Yes, before
when
that,
the
it's in
sewer
the 80s.
studies were actually done back in that day, in 1980s. And the county teamed up with the village to submit on grant applications. And so back in the 80s, it was decided the best path forward would be for the county to serve this area. So, in that point, there was grant applications put in. $7 million worth of construction put in. The county was in a better position to extend sewers to the
Well,
village.
it's not a better position. Morrow was in zero position.
That's what I'm
Morrow
saying.
could not
Yeah.
build their own plant and maintain it.
Right, so the county just has the assets and the resources to
Okay,
do the work.
so then,
As far as a formal agreement between the county and, in the village, I'm not aware of one.
Okay,
I've
so now
not
I
seen
want
one.
to go back to Bruce. So Bruce, given the fact that we voluntarily, apparently, built sewer capacity in this area and provided sewer capacity to Morrow, and then people, started building homes relying on that capacity, but it was clearly communicated to them that they didn't have capacity to go above these numbers. Do we have any legal obligation to increase our capacity there and to solve this problem?
No.
Okay, so does Morrow have an obligation under state law to prohibit a violation of the fact that they're gonna cause these overflow problems? And I'm assuming if we cannot be treating it because we don't have the capacity to treat this, that there's gonna be some sort of legal problem with them just going on and building when we don't have the capacity. Isn't there, Bruce, some sort of problem with that?
I don't know that it's Morrow's problem. Our problem that we have to deal with could be the EPA. On December 22nd of last year, when Chris stood before you, one of the statements he made to you was that the inflow and infiltration was at a rate that was much lower than what the EPA required, and they wanted us to get to their level. Today, Chris used a different number, maybe I misunderstood him, but in December, he said the EPA wanted at least 3.5 inches of rainfall before the sewage inflow and infiltration. And I thought at that time, he said, our study showed it was at only 2.14. Today, I thought you said 1.5.
So EPA's goal is that, you can't prevent, you're gonna lose against Mother Nature. So there'll be a storm event out there that will cause an overflow. But just because, you can't protect against monsoon.
But it's the frequency.
But it's the
There's
frequency.
a lot
So
more
they're saying
2-inch
EPA
events than
says-
5-inch events.
EPA says a 10-year storm event, a 24-hour duration storm event that occurs once every 10 years. That storm event is 3.5 inches of rain. So our models show that we will have sanitary sewer overflows at roughly 2.14 inches of rain.
So what does that mean? So if
So-
we have an overflow, that means it doesn't go through the sanitary sewer system, it goes directly into the river?
It surcharges, the sewer backs up into the manholes, and then it'll top a manhole and end up going to a storm sewer.
Yeah, in the village. I mean, you've
So-
got overflows in the
But we've
actual
not,
streets.
Well, then it
this
goes
is
into the
not.
storm sewer system, which shunts right into the river.
So this is not something that we see out there. We see the sewers that are full, but keep in mind that this happens, right now it happens maybe once a year, if it happens. The model is showing that, it should be happening. We're not getting complaints from the village. The village is here. They can talk about what happens during these storm events. There may be other issues beyond our sewers backing up. They may have roadway flooding because of just storm, rainfall, that they can't get that conveyed out of their system. But we're not seeing health issues out there at this point.
Chris, I'm hearing that you're arguing both sides of the point. Either there's a problem and they're exceeding capacity and we have an EPA problem, we have a capacity issue, there's not enough there. This was constructed for a certain size, and ERUs and all that type of stuff from back in the day, which we were very tight on and very strict on, how much capacity goes into our lines. That's one position. And now you're,
I'm not
seem
try-
like you're advocating,
I'm
hey, it's
not
no big
trying-
deal, it
I'm
happens
not
once a
trying
year,
to
no big
defend.
deal.
No,
Which is it?
I'm not, we're seeing backups, we're seeing issues, but I'm saying I don't see it as, I have not seen overflows out there. I've not seen it. We do
Are
have
we not
issues.
regulated? It doesn't matter if you see it anecdotally. Are we not regulated by the EPA?
We are absolutely regulated.
So just because you don't see it, is that a big deal or not?
No, the model shows that it's theoretically should be happening. I'm pretty sure the model is pretty accurate, all right? So we do have issues. I'm not arguing that we don't have issues. I'm just saying, I don't know how big of a health issue it is at this point. It'll get worse as it goes on, if more development continues on.
Which is exactly why there was a limit put in, correct? You're right at that tipping
That's
point
right, yes.
of capacity.
There was a
So
limit put on it.
it's not, we're going backwards. The question before us today is, do we allow more and more stuff going into this system that admittedly is now at capacity?
Yes, and that's the recommendations we have. You know, we showed in the slides some recommendations to limit construction out there, to defend our boundaries, not to expand the service area, to put additional fees out in this area so that we can raise money to make improvements out there.
Okay, do we have the right, Bruce, to tell Morrow and private property owners that they may not tap into our sewer system?
We're not going to tell Morrow anything because Morrow isn't involved in the sewer system.
Okay?
Do we have the right to tell someone they can't tap into the system? If it's someone that we put on notice, yes, we have the right to tell them that. We're out. They've already exceeded at 585, they've exceeded the 5 to 550. They're beyond that. I don't know how they even got beyond that. What Chris is advocating is an additional surcharge
Additional capacity fee.
in this, or capacity fee in this sewer improvement area, and you have the authority to do that.
And what will that do for us?
That'll allow us, if for the additional construction that happens, that, you know, the houses that go in, that will raise us revenue that we can pour into our projects.
And what project solves this problem?
The study shows that we have to build significant capital improvements out there to address capacity issues. So we have a series of
Existing
projects.
capacity issues or future capacity issues?
Both existing and future capacity issues.
And what are you
Right now-
suggesting we do?
Right now, my suggestion is that we put a capacity fee out there on any additional construction, because there are some projects that will continue to move forward, including the villages of Classic Way and Hopewell Valley, that the county committed capacity to. So that's the properties in Hamilton Township.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand this point. So we're already under contract to provide sewer services with development that is not yet online.
Yes,
So we're going to have to make an investment, a capital investment, to expand out our sewer service, regardless of what we say today, because we've already committed to provide sewer service for which you're telling us we don't currently have the
yes,
capacity.
we have projects.
Okay,
on
well,
board.
that to me is a completely different,
But
I don't think that's the case, Chris.
We have committed-
Bruce, did we not do a sewer moratorium where there was thousands of lots that were approved and under contract, and we said, yes, I'm in a sewer improvement area, I get sewers from Warren County, and we came in and said there's no more room at the end, we simply stopped granting access.
The county did a temporary moratorium while we conducted a study. And we ended up terminating that temporary moratorium earlier than expected because the study was complete.
It was not a moratorium, it was, you put a cap on it. So it wasn't a moratorium, we put a cap on the number of connections.
So many
built.
ERUs
It
per
was
year.
600 a year back in 2006, I think it was, until we had capacity built at Lower Little Miami.
yeah, but wait.
And so we completed the capacity at Lower Little Miami, and then you released that.
But this is a very important point. Are we, just because someone is in a sewer improvement area, and now they're the last one in, now they're saying, I've got one more house, I've built 585 homes, but yet, I've got another 400, and regardless of, let's exempt this one because they were actually told, but let's say it's developer B that has 500 homes and Morrow's told him he can build 1,000. And so those additional 500 homes are in the sewer improvement area, there's a line right out there. I don't think we're under any legal obligation if we say it's at max capacity, we don't have to do anything.
Correct. And you're talking about Woodlands at Morrow. we don't have to do
Well-
that. Commissioner Jones is talking about Village as a classic way.
And Hopewell Valley,
Well, in Hopewell Valley, but I understand they're predominantly built out.
they're close, yes.
Yeah, but what happened here is that Woodlands went 85 lots over the agreement that they could only do 500.
35.
35?
Well,
50,
it's 50 to 100.
500 to 550.
So either 85 or 35.
Okay. And I don't know how big of a problem that is, but then it seems to me that since we have the territory and we're supplying the sewers, and since really this is just a money issue of raising the money to improve it, and what you're suggesting is a fee that would be on each platted lot or on each person who taps in, how would the fee work?
The fee would be when a builder comes in to get a permit from us,
Do what?
they pay the fees. The builders pay the connection
For each
fees.
platted lot?
For each platted lot. It's not the developer, it's the builder who comes in after the development is constructed.
Okay, so
and
when the
roads are
builder is
in,
about to get a permit to build,
They
he
pay the
pays the
fees,
fee.
and that's when the fees
Connection.
would be.
the connection fee.
Not, he gets a building permit from the building department, but he comes
the-
to the sewer department to get a connection permit.
Okay, and that's when he
that's-
pays the fee.
That's when Mr.
And that-
Roush is saying
That's
he
when the
would pay the
fees
fee.
would be applied.
Okay, and so we have the right as the county commission to raise the fees on when the builder comes in and says, I want to have a connection. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay, and you're saying, what you're advocating to us today, I guess, is that we raise those fees to cover costs to improve our capacity.
Cover a portion of the cost. When you look at the amount of cost that we're looking at here to solve it, Black and Veatch is saying, somewhere around $20 million to expand the pump station and to put an equalization tank out there. So what we're proposing in the presentation and what we talked about last, in December, is that this is a long-term project. There's not a quick fix to this. This will take years. This will take somewhere between 5 to 10 years to complete, because we're gonna do point repairs in the collection system to try to reduce that infiltration. Then we'll come back, update our sewer study, and then at that point, we'll figure out what size of, improvements to make.
So what is the
Because we're
info-
trying to reduce the total construction cost, because $20 million for this area is just way too much. So we're trying to reduce that cost.
So the infiltration problem is because we got leaky pipes? Is that it?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and so the fix to that is to put something around the
Line
pipes or
them.
put new pipes in or something?
To do point repairs, to seal the pipes, to go in, to line sewer lines that are leaking, to try to go in and to repair laterals back to people's homes that are leaking, manholes that are leaking, try to tighten up the system as much as we
So in
can.
other words, a lot of the problem is because our current system is not operating properly and is allowing infiltration.
That's that's part of the problem.
Due
I mean,
to,
that's-
due to utilization. We knew this was gonna happen, right? That when you have so much, if you utilize it a lot more, it wears out.
Yeah, but I think the assumption when we initially went in was that the system was gonna be a lot tighter than it is. And so that's why, when it first went in with the design concept, there was an assumption, I think, made that these sewer lines would be relatively tight. When they got in there, when it actually went to operate, they found out the system isn't nearly as robust as what they initially anticipated. And at that point, they had allowed in, other development.
But there's two issues.
But
There's
yes,
the-
it's development, additional development, and the existing system that went in
Well,
was leakier
from
than
what
anticipated.
what I hear is that there's two issues. Number one is the current system with the current users tied into that system is not working perfectly. It needs upgrades just to handle what's in there right now. Then on top of that, what does the system look like? What are our EPA issues with additional users tying into that existing system that's
Yes.
already failing its current customers?
We have a system that was probably under designed initially, and then we allowed additional users in, expanded the service area. So it's twofold. One is the initial construction wasn't as robust as we had hoped. The system's leakier than we anticipated. In addition to that, we've allowed additional developments to enter in.
Do you guys have something to say? I mean, you keep talking and kind of laughing about what we're talking about. Do you have something to say? I mean, Sean, I believe. I mean, am I missing something? No. Okay. So.
Yeah, I think there's some comments to be made.
Okay, that's fine. We'll call on you. So it's still the current users versus the future users and tying in with those, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're asking for recommendations. We've got some, recommendations out there, that we're
But see,
asking.
this is very
the board to
frustrating
take.
because this was a rural area with no sewers and it was limited. The Village of Morrow accepted and annexed all this property in and did very high density. And now all of a sudden, 20 years later, there's a problem, which is exactly what was told to everyone involved way back when. And now you're talking about, oh, now it's an additional $20 million to fix this problem we said was coming.
Well, but I think that part of the problem, if I understand it, is not merely the overcapacity of building out new homes or lots, but the fact that the system itself is allowing too much infiltration. And even without having more build out or more lots attached to it, I think what Chris is saying is that we are overflowing and exceeding EPA guidelines because our system that we installed has too much infiltration. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, yes, we have a problem out there. Absolutely. The system backs up. The model shows that we should have overflows. We go out there, it appears that there may or may not be. But yes, I mean, the system is under capacity. It has, there's too much flow going in, and we have more development coming.
And so how do we, let's just take that problem now. Is it not legitimate for us to charge a fee on all of the ratepayers? In other words, increase rates in this area to cover that problem, which is an existing problem. And since we want to cover the cost to maintain our system by the current users, isn't there, so you don't put that on the backs of new people, you put that on to the cost of the current users, don't you?
You can. I mean, you can create a sub-district in your billing system that specifically applies to this area.
It seems
But
to me
that's not what
that's-
we've done in the past.
Well, it seems to me though, however, there should be two solutions to this. One should be a charge on new capacity with builders that is equated to the increased capacity that we're having to provide to them, so that there has to be a fee that associates with that somehow. But then there should be a rate increase to correct the current problems that are causing us not to meet the EPA standards because you've got too much infiltration. And I don't think that's fair to place on the backs of the new people.
Commissioner Grossman, it's been the policy of most boards that new development should pay for new construction.
Well, I
So
agree
they
with
should
that. I
pay
just
for-
said that. I'm saying that you're telling us two different problems. You tell me if I'm wrong. I think I'm hearing you say that our current system allows too much infiltration so that we're overflowing the system and in potential violation of EPA standards. And it seems to me if there's no more capacity coming in, we have to solve that problem. And that's not a problem created per se by new people. That's a problem with the existing system used by our current ratepayers. So that would justify, I don't know
And
how we
that
did
is,
this in the
that is a
past.
portion, so, when we run our financials, so at the end of the year, we try to have revenue that exceeds our operating costs.
Well, of course.
And so then we take that excess revenue and we plow that into our capital projects. So we do that in our rates. We're trying to run it so that we have retained earnings at the end of the year through our operations. And that retained earnings, along with the tap-in fees, goes into our capital program.
So how much
So-
do we have,
and
how much
that-
do we have currently to do this $20 million thing?
Right now, I'd have to, I don't have those numbers in front of me. I can't speak on how much we have, but
Well, I
we
would
do
like
not
to know
have
that
$20
before we
million.
make decisions.
Because we've got a number of other projects that are ongoing right now. We have, construction of a treatment plant that we've got $8 million underway. We've got improvements down at Bear Run and Foster's that right now we're looking in cost of like $7 or $8 million for those improvements. So, I mean, we're planning to come forward to the board later this year to talk about, rates and to talk about our overall program.
Seems to me that we should be dealing with this all together in a holistic way, not in a piecemeal fashion.
But at this point, we do not have $20 million set aside for this area.
Yeah, but we don't need $20 million set aside today. You're saying that this
Today.
is
It's a long,
it's a
Yeah.
long-term project, and there is some piece of that 20 million we would be investing anyway. You've not been able to quantify, is that 2 million, 5 million, 10 million? But there is,
Right-
you
right
will
now,
be able to
yes.
tell me. At some point, you'll be able to say, of this 20 million, of a 5 to 7 or 10-year build-out, if we were to do the whole kit and caboodle, this is what would be attributed to new expansion, and this would be attributed to existing because our system is failing and insufficient for what's already been approved and under contract or already built.
yes, it's in our capital plan. And our capital plan takes, it encompasses a 10-year period where we project out projects.
That would be helpful to know from my standpoint.
So, like I say, our intention is to meet with the board here later this year, probably in 3 months, to talk about rates, to talk about improvements, our capital plan, because they're all related. Like you mentioned, Commissioner Grossman, they're all related. Our connection fee, our user fees that our customers pay is directly related to our capital program, is directly related to our tap fees. So it's all interconnected. So, at this point, we're planning to come forward to the board to talk about future rates, to talk about tap fees, with some recommendations to look at the overall project, the overall program.
And so what is it that you need from the board today?
So I need action from the board to, inform us whether, Woodlands Amaro has authority to proceed forward. If they do have authority to proceed forward, is there gonna be limitations on it? If there's limitations on it, what is that limitations per year? Or does the board want to, enforce the restriction that they put in, 20 years ago? So I need direction from the board as far as how to proceed forward with the Woodlands Amaro. I'd like direction as far as the fee, the connection fee, whether we can put in on the connection fee to raise revenues in this area. That's the direction I'm looking for.
I mean, I guess my point of view here is this is just, from my standpoint, this is a question of who pays and what is the reasonable allocation of cost, to what parties. It meets zoning, it's within our boundaries, and notwithstanding, I'm reading this letter to the best of my ability, it's way too small here, but for the best of my ability, it's merely an acknowledgement that 17 years ago, that there was not the capacity to serve at the requested density. A reasonable person could suggest that since it's in the service boundary, that in 17 years, the capacity would be there. I don't see this as some sort of moratorium or absolute that thou shalt not do it because plans proceeded from 2006 to plat it out and get approval and all those sorts of things. So that is not particularly germane from my standpoint. But I do think there is a financial issue here that needs to be resolved. The developer has said that the solution should not burden the village of Morrow. That was the developer's perspective at the time. I don't know if Morrow should contribute in some way since they want the higher density. I don't know how much new developers should pay. I don't know how much we should pay, meaning socialized ratepayers should pay. But that to me is the question. It's not a question of whether or not, this service should be.
Where's our closest treatment plant to Morrow?
It's at Lower Little Miami wastewater treatment plant, which
Okay.
is 6
So
miles away.
that's a considerable distance.
Yes,
Lots of mileage
six,
of pipes.
6.5 miles away.
So theoretically, this board has always taken the position that even though that's 6 miles away, those customers are going to pay the same rate as people in Deerfield Township.
We have a uniform rate structure across our whole.
Correct. So now, what I'm hearing the board potentially suggest is a socialized way of looking at this, that even though this is for this one individual area that was clearly warned, don't do this, this is all the capacity that we have, don't overtax this. Now, there's a problem, and now potentially we're gonna say everyone in the county is gonna pay for this area that clearly costs a heck of a lot more for us to serve, and they paid the same rate for a long
Keep in
time.
mind, we have 4.5 treatment plants. So administratively wise, it makes us a lot simpler if we run it all as one sewer district. And the county decided to do that cost-wise and financially wise.
Oh, I've been a big fan of that.
Since you have 4.5 treatment plants, because we own part of Franklin Regional, or we're a participant in Franklin Regional, the cost, each of those could be viewed as profit centers or little operational areas where, yes, the cost of service for some area is going to be higher than other areas. This cost to serve Dale Acres, which is 50 customers, and the fact that we got to send people down there in the far reaches of the county to operate this treatment plant for 50 residents, that cost center is a lot higher than, say, Lower Little Miami, where you got the economies of
Which
scale.
is why we have a public utility.
Just when you say socialism, I'm not.
No,
real
it's
fan
why
of
we
that.
have a public
It's-
utility.
Yes.
It's recognizing it's in the public interest to provide these services, and some areas are more cost-effective or less cost-effective than others, but it is in the overall public interest. So this has been established. This is why we have public utilities and why we have uniform rate making. It's also why in water, for example, there's some areas of the county for which we purchase water more expensively than we charge the rates to those customers, because we acknowledge that there is a public interest in that. And so while, again, I'm not clear on what is the way to best distribute the costs and benefits associated with this project, I don't think it's inconsistent with how we've always viewed our public utilities.
Absolutely. I mean, it's you bring up the issue of, purchasing water from an outside entity at a higher rate than others. You could look at, Waynesville. We took over the Village of Waynesville sewer system and treatment plant. That's and we've sunk, since that time, we've sunk millions of dollars into that treatment plant for a limited number of customers in Corwin and Harveysburg that we serve, and also, Waynesville, now that we took over their customers. So the cost there is higher than, say, at Lower Little Miami. So, so every one of these areas, you're trying to spread the cost over the whole utility, the whole, all your users, and just try, because if you don't, then you end up trying to create, accounting nightmares for all these different areas, and you end up with 5 different rate structures, across the county for every service area, and then you have to keep track of all your costs for those areas and your revenue, so they have to balance. So it just becomes, you spend more time trying to do the accounting, and and you hire more staff to try to get all that right, and then you have to go through all these audits through the state, for all these different areas. It just becomes a nightmare. So that's why, we want to keep that uniform rate structure across the whole county.
All right. Well,
So do we want to, if
yeah, I
you
think
still
you
have
want- I think
questions
we
for
wanna
him,
hear
I
from
was
other
just going to
people.
hear for some other
Yeah, I think
other
it's a good
people.
idea.
So I guess we'll hear from the developer of the Woodlands of Morrow now, and then any of the other developers who are here to talk about this, and then I'd like to hear from the village.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And would you please state your name and address for the record?
Sure. Dan Fisher, address as well.
Address, yes, please.
6574 Patty's Place, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45248. Just wanted to thank the commission for your guys' time on this matter today. So I'm Dan Fisher. I'm one of the developers of the Woodlands and Mora project. I'm here today with my partner, Mary Allen. And we've done a lot of research on this. We inherited this project, and so I was going to just give like a brief kind of context to our situation here and our perspective on the project. So the project was conceived by my late father-in-law, and that was in the mid-2000s. And my background is I've always been in construction. I started in development. I worked with MI Homes for several years, doing a lot of projects in Warren County. And Mary's an entrepreneur turned developer. My father-in-law passed away in 2019. That's when we took over this project. So we've kind of had to come up to speed on some of the issues with the project. Just in development, there's always things. This is a major one. And so, you know, as we gained more information and we studied our records and, like I said, the conception of the project, is I think Joe, he was a seasoned civil engineer and developer, and I think he always had the perspective that this issue it wouldn't plague the project in perpetuity. I think he thought, in conjunction with the county, that this was something that could get solved as far as our capacity going beyond that initial quota that was outlined in 2004.
Can you explain to us why your project, I guess before you were running it, why it built more lots or put in more houses than they were approved for?
Yeah, I think one thing that's been a major development was the Black and Veatch report. Just from my perspective, you know, Chris could speak if he doesn't agree with anything.
Yeah, but
that
why'd
I've
you
seen.
why'd you go over the 500 number?
Honestly, I wasn't aware of that letter up until Chris
So
shared
that's
it with
the
me.
answer? You weren't aware that there was a limitation?
That's correct.
Okay, well, that's an answer.
Yeah, I never knew that quota was out there, and our perspective is really just what we're working on in the project. So our sewers that we install are, you know, the modern technology and the modern standards that the county has outlined. And so any kind of global perspective on sewer capacity in the county isn't something that would even be on our radar unless.
We have a
this is
problem
shared
with us raising the charge that you are billed in order to tap into the system? You have a problem with that?
We're sensitive to all costs, but I think our mindset is to be a developer that we want to do work in Warren County, and we want to be one that contributes to, you know, keeping our project going is our ultimate goal, and we see the issue that you guys have here, and we would, you know, we kind of come here humbly to request that we have your support.
Well, I don't like, you know, doing things through provision of utilities that we're bound to do in order to have some sort of zoning restriction on you or your right to build out homes and make a living and things like that Morrow is approved or want. But we do have a responsibility to properly fund it. And we have a responsibility to meet EPA standards. And we have to do that in the real world, real time. And right now we've got a problem and we need to properly fund it. And then the question is, you know, yeah, we've got this same rate across the system, but we have special problems in this area. But it's something that we installed, so I think we need to properly fix it. But at the same time, when we're having building, particularly your building, which is more than was approved, that, you know, in and of itself creates a question with how best to resolve this. And certainly, I think that bespeaks of maybe you understanding that you don't have the right. This is what our lawyer just told us. You don't have the right to tap into our system because you were previously informed that there was a cap.
Right, I mean, I do think it's relevant to state that, the project where it is today has contributed over $3 million in tap-in fees alone. So that's just the Woodlands and Morrow connection fees to date. And so if we do another 250 homes, that could be $1.5 million to $2 million more that'll contribute to the solution. The county already has the solution outlined and is already implementing it. And, so I think that might be something that you guys want to consider as a revenue source, that we continue. And we've even brainstormed with Chris over other ideas, like can we make contributions that would offset the capacity challenges that we would create from the additional homes that we're requesting. And so that may be something that's contemplated as well. Like
And
we
have
would
you
contribute
costed
to.
that out? This is the same question I asked for Chris, and Chris may be the one that can provide it to us at some point. But have you put any assigned a cost to that?
Yeah, we have actually done that with the Warren County Sewer Department. They were brainstorming as to what would be like where initial monies would make the most sense, and they came to us with some ideas. And so we have considered that and think that that's certainly a good option that's worth talking about.
So you're open to contributing above and beyond what you're used to contributing, but the question is one of fairness from your perspective.
That's correct. Plus just our sensitivity. I mean, this is an entry-level price point, and it appeals as such to all the customers that are looking for that point in the market. But, our sensitivity to cost increases is greater than, if we had higher margins and things like that. But certainly open to talking. Like I said, I feel like we have to humble ourselves in this scenario because we really need your guys' help and approval, so.
We want to hear from some of the other developers that are here too. Good morning. Can you just state your name and address for the record, please?
Sure, thanks. I'm Joe Prus. I'm with Prus Construction, address 11935 Stonemark Lane, Loveland, Ohio, 45140. So I'm the president of Prus Construction. I'm the managing member of Prus Properties. We're doing the development of the Village of the Classic Way. So we're currently under construction right now. We have 2 streets that will plan on being online by fall of this year. We've got commitments to 2 builders, both Ryan Homes and Fisher Homes, to purchase those lots. They're actively marketing those lots as we speak. We've moved the dirt, the clearing's done. We got half the sanitary sewers installed. Water main will start next week. Within 2 weeks, we're starting the turn lane that we're obligated to put in on Marcus Ado Road. That will begin in 2 weeks. That'll all be done by the end of the summer. So we're under contract for that. We have one more street to finish out, the equivalent of 150 lots in our section to finish out. Plus, we have 25 acres of commercial development, or commercial acreage to be developed that is on US 22 across from Valley Vineyard that we had planned on marketing that starting next year. We've been holding off because we've been told by real estate folks that we need more rooftops in the area before it's a viable property. Of course, we're there. We have all the rooftops that pretty much we're 3/4 built out at this point, or 2/3 anyway. So the plan was to start marketing that. I don't know how that fits into the whole equation because that 25 acres is equivalent of probably 75 residential lots or more. In the sanitary sewer world, Chris can speak to that. I'm not sure exactly what those numbers are, but that puts us in a bad situation there. So again, we're under contract with 2 builders. They have a pickup schedule commitment to us. We've got commitment to them to deliver 48 lots per year to those builders. So that's that situation. Now the $6,000 per lot, if it's pretty much, we're going to get the brunt of that. That'll be equivalent of $900,000 to $1 million that'll be placed just on our development to be paid into that system. And of course, when we start, frankly, we never would have begun this. We never would have purchased the property had the lot restrictions that suggested by the sewer department of 15 lots per year, and or the $6,000 a lot just for that area, got to be levied on the three developments that were going on in there, we never would have purchased the property because we're at a big disadvantage to other developments in the county and the area. We're selling the lots for 50 grand a piece, $40,000 to $50,000 a piece. So we're now at a 10 to 15% disadvantage to home, and eventually home builders or home buyers. The builders have got to tell them it's going to cost you $6,000 more to build there than it's going to cost you in Shaker Run or other developments in the area. So no doubt our development will come to not a screeching halt, but a substantial slowdown. Challenges for us, of course, we're all in. We've already got substantial commitments to the lending institutions. We got loans on the development, et cetera. That's all going. That's all ongoing now. So we're making our payments in due diligence, and on our situation, if I understand it correctly, the county sewer department did commit to us back in 2005. You can have this many. You're allotted this many lots, the equivalent lots of gallons per acre, specifically how it was worded, but essentially they committed to us, you can build this many lots. So we're actively doing that, and now that the rules are changing. I don't know I haven't approached the builders as to, if the $6,000 is implemented, what their reaction is going to be. Because again, I'm changing the rules on them, what I am, that the county would be, but it would be equivalent of, gee, we made a commitment to you to buy these lots for X amount of dollars per lot, under assumptions that we're on equal playing ground. So I don't know how it'll play out, but that's our biggest concern right now. There's also, it hasn't been addressed yet, but the sewer department has suggested a 15 lot per year limitation on lots being developed coming on system. I assume that means that's per development. I assume that's what they're suggesting there. Again, I'm under contract to develop, to commit to deliver 48 lots per year. That puts me in a bit of a challenge there too, or quite a challenge actually.
So sir, you're,
Can I clarify?
Sure, please.
Sorry.
We provided you a copy of the presentation beforehand, and the 15 lots per year, that doesn't apply, that's talking about a certain area, and it's not your area.
Okay, I thought it
It's
was
talking
the Morrow-
about
the Morrow
the
sewer area.
old area in Morrow, the original assessment project from back in 1992.
Okay.
So we're not trying to put limitations on your development or Hopewell Valley, because, the county, we recognize that we made a commitment to the county years ago. So that 15 lots per year was like any new developments in the incorporated area of the village.
Okay.
Chris, did we make commitments? I understand the Classic Way Farm one, but then you said you purchased an additional, a new acreage of?
No, I'm sorry, all the villages of Classic Way, the Classic Way property is what I'm.
So that's not new, that's just a new phase of that?
Oh, exactly, yeah.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought you were saying you purchased additional land.
No, we're currently
and that-
working on our phase 9, with phase 10 left to go, and there's really 7 other lots that we haven't decided
But
what to
did
do
we
with it yet.
commit to provide sewers to your development at
Yeah,
its
oh, I'm
current amount that's
Yes,
projected?
that's
So
correct.
that you were not under any limitations by us like the Woodlands was. You were actually told that you could build and get sewers at the rate that you're now predicting. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, well then, that's a whole different animal, but at the same time, you can appreciate that tap-in fees change, and that ultimately is passed on to the consumer. I mean, you guys don't eat that, you pass on your costs.
Well, it'll be passed on to the builder, who will be passed on to the.
Yeah, sure, right. And
Yeah,
so
but
then you own-
conversely, if you're a home buyer in that area, why pay $6,000 more for that? You can buy the exact same house up in Shaker for $6,000 less, you can buy it in the Village of the Classic Way.
All right,
So
I understand the point.
if there needs to be an assessment to developers, I would request it's all developers in the county, it's countywide, not, in essence, it's gotta be mainly the Village of the Classic Way that's gotta, so our $1 million, towards a $20 million project, not to make light of that, but, again,
You
it
want-
puts
you want-
us in a difficult situation.
Okay, I get you. Thank you.
In what year did you start developing this property?
The partnership, we purchased it from the original partners. We were partners of the original group. That group fell apart, so the development started in 2004. It was purchased in 2004, ground was broke in 2005. And then 08, 09, 010, everything came to a screeching halt, so nothing happened then. So we really planned on developing completely out in 15 years, so we'd have been completely done by now had the economy not really tanked on us, but that's where that is. Thank you.
Thank you. There any other developers here who want to talk before I invite the village forward? Okay.
Hi, I'm Mary Allen with the Woodlands Development Group. I just wanted to clarify a little bit because it seems like you guys are stuck on why did we build more than 500 homes when Joe had that letter. And one thing about him is he was a great record keeper, and so we still have 30 years of his work at our fingertips. And I read everything about the Woodlands of Morrow. And so in 2005, he contracted with Dave Pizzoa at EMH&T Civil Engineers to do a study how to solve this sewer issue for this development. And what Dave said is add a pump to the lift station at Todd's Fork, and that will solve your problems. You don't even have to do anything with the force main. And so Joe was going on that advice that we could simply add a pump to the lift station. And so then fast forward and the housing market came to a screeching halt. He had about 137 lots built that every builder backed out of. And so for 10 years, he didn't record a phase up here, but he continued to pay on the land, continued to pay his real estate taxes, and kept it alive. And it looked like a ghost town up there. I saw it. And
The
so
houses
then,
were all built?
I'm sorry?
Were the houses all built?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it was 100, maybe 10 or 15 houses were sold, but it was a horrific time in development back then. But he stayed true to his promise to the Village of Morrow that he would build this development for them. He was a problem solver. He was an engineer and he was a developer. Thousands of lots in western Hamilton County this guy built. So he knew what he was doing. So fast forward about 2017 and 18, when things started coming back and we started building again, we weren't near the 500 lots. But in 2018, Chris Broush came to you guys, and you know, I have the newspaper article I'd be glad to share with you, but you all said, don't stop development, instead fix this problem. And that's why we kept developing.
We said develop more than the 500?
No, you said you did not want to limit, what you guys said is you didn't want to limit development in this area. You didn't, because he asked you to stop. And you all said, no, keep going, but find a solution to the problem.
This is Chris was asking us.
Chris Broush, yeah.
And he was telling us that we were approving then more than 500 in your area?
Well, this is a global problem. It's not just us. The problem comes in where the lift station pushes the sanitary out, and then they, Classic Way and us, meet at a force main that goes on to the pump station.
Yep.
So it's not a capacity problem as far as stuff going into our pump station there. The problem is that the force main can't handle everybody.
Okay, but I guess, so it's your impression that by doing this pump station fix, that you could go above the 500? Or you weren't
Absolutely.
even thinking about the 500?
What-
Because you didn't even know about it?
No, what I'm telling you is Joe was already thinking in 2005 how to get more houses up there than just 500. It wasn't an issue of,
Did he get approval to go above the 500 because he was doing this, this pump station fix?
She's saying because someone
No.
on the commission said it in a newspaper article, he took that as they're gonna fix it, don't limit.
that was in 2018.
Yeah, that's what
But
she
in
said. Is that a
2005,
newspaper article gave him the license to go above the 500.
in 2005, he was looking for solutions to the problem to have capacity for more than 500 houses.
Well, did he ask for that specifically?
He asked for that in the study, absolutely, yeah. And the engineer for that study is here, Dave Pizzoa.
Okay,
He's here.
Bruce, does any of this make sense to you?
You're hearing one side of the story, you're hearing perception. Now we're hearing perception from a newspaper article, in addition to that. I have no doubt that these people understood something a certain way, but whether someone at the county made some representation to them, you know, I don't doubt what Mr. Preuss says, but I wouldn't rely on that. I would pull the approval of preliminary plan and see what the condition of approval was. In that time period, the sanitary engineer issued a letter to the planning commission about capacity as directed by the Board of County Commissioners because it was an issue. So every single development. So if there's no condition, no limitation on Mr. Preuss's development at the Village is a Classic Way, then good for him. But, and that, again, may be his perception of things, but I'd certainly be looking at the condition of approval by the Regional Planning Commission's approval of preliminary plan before you relied on what someone said to you today.
And I'm not contradicting anything you're saying.
I have the newspaper article.
Yeah, was
that
that me or
quotes you.
somebody that said that? I don't know. I don't remember.
I didn't want to stop development, neither did Shannon.
Yeah, well,
But the point is
but
that
we
the
would, but we would
original-
not have contradicted. If we had been told that there was a letter that had a cap on this, and that's what we were addressing, we would have addressed that specifically.
I don't see any, and I wasn't here. I only found the newspaper article in Jill's records, but I know that at the time, that, and we were nowhere near 500 homes then, so maybe it just wasn't an issue.
But see, and again, I appreciate both of you. You seem like very reasonable people. You're just trying to earn a living. We've got, I shouldn't speak for my colleagues. I have no problem with what you're trying to do. And as a matter of fact, back in the day, I was the biggest supporter of expanding the Lower Little Miami sewer plant because there was no more houses going in. And Pat South and I did that, period. So it's not, I'm a stop development guy at all. However, Morrow is in a unique situation with this annexation to high density when the infrastructure wasn't there. At the same time, Lower Little Miami, or the Little Miami School District was in fiscal emergency and saying, please don't change zoning to allow young families coming in with 2.3 kids to kill our schools that are already. So those are all the things we were hearing at the time. So that was the reality. So then it was a very finite amount. And again, this commission said, don't do this. And then if you do this, do 500 to 550. Everybody knew that.
Well-
And so if you're saying, Joe, or the previous, the developer said, well, I saw 2 county commissioners in a published report say, let's just fix the problem, I'm gonna let it rip, that carries no weight with me.
No, he didn't say that at all, and he was dead a year later, so he didn't really say that. All he said is, at the time, we weren't near 500 homes, so he kept building. He had just come out of a 10-year period where nothing sold.
Correct, and honestly, I don't even blame you all, because it's our sewer department that kept granting access.
And
So,
what the letter from Dick Reniker said in 2005 was, don't build more than 500 to 550 until the commissioners approve expansion of the Todd's Fork lift station and repairs to the force main. So it wasn't like build 500 and go home. It was don't build more than 500 until this takes place, until the commissioners.
correct, and that's
approve this.
one project on a myriad of 400 square miles that we have inside of the county that need to happen.
Right. And so we come today and say, there are people in your county who need this level of housing, who work here at Warren County, who can't live in the county because houses cost $500,000. So we want to continue. We feel like we have a commitment to the village at Morrow to continue, and we're willing to participate. You know, the deal that we've made with Chris, or what we have talked about, is we'll camera the sewer down. We paid over $500,000 to do an off-site sewer between Todd's Fork and the lift station, and we can line that, and then it would be a net-net. Then we wouldn't, even if we build out our 250 houses, we won't be contributing to the sewer problem. And we're willing to do that.
sounds like Morrow might need to operate that and allow you to build your own sewer plant if that's what they want to do.
No, it's lining an off-site sewer pipe.
She's
So if
talking about
we
solving
line
the
that,
infiltration problem.
It will stop the infiltration problem from our development, and others around, not just us, other people go into that. But that would mean that we could build 250 houses, and it would not tax the sewer system any further. And we're willing to do that.
Well, it would tax the sewer system further because you're adding more houses. But you're not taxing the sewer system by an infiltration, is what you're saying, if you do that fix.
Right. And remember, we're not building 250 houses at a time. We're building about 40 a year.
I get you.
And it's 400 gallons a day per house. So it's not significant. It's 1% of the global problem that you all have with.
Well, and the capacity problem, the issue, as I understand it, is not really day-to-day usage. It's a event when there's a lot of rain and there's infiltration, and that overwhelms the system.
Right. And it overwhelms it because there's many more developments than just us using the system. It's not just us taxing the
Well,
system.
we understand, but it's your system that was a specific limitation.
Well, the other guys donated land, the prior owners donated land for a lift station. The other guy up the road donated land for a school. And so, those were deals that were made. And Joe asked, what can I do to get more capacity? And he said it's a first come, first served basis. So my question is, well, not really, because
Well, in
other
Joe's
people
case,
didn't-
but in Joe's case, you had a letter that limited it. That's what we're being told. And that's not the same as some of the other people here.
No,
But it was with you all.
I agree.
And that's that's part of the dynamic in our decision. Because really, my own feeling is that I want public utilities to be provided for appropriate growth, and we're responsible for that. And when we have a leaky system, we should be trying to fix it. And when we have people like yourself who want to build more, I want to honor that too, but we have to have a way to fund it properly. And we have to do it in a manner that's consistent with the fact that we've got ratepayers all over the county. We have people paying tap-in fees all over the place, and we have to do something that's fair for everyone.
I agree with you. And I feel like, we've agreed with Chris of something that we can do as developers for our part that would make it a net. So it's not an issue of taxing the system.
We appreciate you trying to help us, believe me.
I just wanted you to have all the facts.
And
And we
that's helpful
appreciate
too.
you guys working with us because it really is important to the Village of Morrow.
We're here we're public servants, and we oversee this particular sewer system, and we want to find a solution.
Okay, how about from the village? And can you just state your name and address for the record, please?
Hello, my name is Carolyn Whitaker. I'm the administrator in the Village of Morrow. My address is 100 Prospect Avenue, within Morrow. Let me just give you just a sense of, I grew up in Morrow, attended Little Miami High School, then left to pursue my fortune, was a faculty member and senior executive at Ohio State University. And then when I retired in 2018, I decided that I needed to come back and give back to the Village of Morrow. The grocery store had left, a number of businesses had closed, and I wanted to make a difference, actually, in the village. So I took this job part-time as administrator of the village. And, and I really want to do something. I've been doing this for 4 years now, part-time. And my sense is when the sewer system was installed, now the mayor tells me this, I don't have any record that Morrow contributed to that sewer system. I can try to find information to that. So I think Morrow is deeply invested in the woodlands. It's deeply invested in the utilities. Morrow just spent about $2 million to redo our own water plant. So we have our own water system, and we've spent, I mean, at the EPA's urging, we spent a great deal of money, resources, and time in upgrading our water system. So I sat down with Chris Broush, I think right before your December meeting, and he went over this presentation with me. I was unaware of this letter. That was the first time I had seen this letter about the 550 when I sat down with him last fall. And I think, to me, we're dealing with some normal wear and tear in a sewer system, and I think Chris has put together, I think, a very logical plan for looking at that wear and tear with the infiltration, with cleaning the force mains, looking at flow rates, things like that. And to be honest, I wasn't happy when he purchased that land on Hazen Avenue. It is right, it's very visible from 22 and 3. I didn't want a big ugly sewer station there, but I understand the need for that. I think Chris has put in realistic steps, and I just wanted to just say we work very close, in the village, we work very closely with the Woodlands. My feeling is the Woodlands has been an economic boom to the village of Morrow. It has brought an influx of, thousands of people into the village, new families, young families. And, we approve each phase of the Woodlands as it comes, up for approval in the village. And I think the village is a little concerned with doubling a sewage tap fee, just in terms of the economic, concerns that would actually give. So those are just the concerns we have. I really appreciate your, involvement and your concern and the time that you've spent in dealing with this issue. And if I can answer any questions on behalf of the village, I'm happy to do that.
On the 500 number, were you aware of this cap of 500 at
No,
Woodlands?
not until Chris told me that last fall.
And so, with regard to your approvals of something over that, you were doing that without knowledge of the 500 CAD? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any?
Let me ask a different question. Wouldn't you be responsible to know that information? Wouldn't you have gone, before you started to approve this, wanted to know from Chris whether there was a cap on this? Since he told it to you last fall, but before you were doing this, wouldn't you have wanted to find out from our sewer department that there was a cap in this area?
I didn't know to ask, So we're very concerned with the water. Sewer was downstream for us, so.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else here who wishes to speak on the matter? Can you please state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Sean Campbell, 8401 Claude Thomas Drive, Franklin, Ohio. Our office, Dave Pike.
Yeah, David Pike, 933 Eagle Run Drive, Centerville, Ohio, 45458.
Can you repeat your last name, please?
Pyzoa, P-Y-Z-O-H-A.
Thank you.
I own Jones Warner Consultants, JWCI. Dave is one of our senior engineers. We have been representing the village of Morrow since 2008, which was after a lot of this took place. We provide some of the reviews. We didn't learn, we were unaware of the letter as well. We learned of capacity issues during the plant, when the plant was being rebuilt, the water plant in Morrow, because we dealt with, we always deal, besides doing work for you guys, we always deal with Chris, and we were having our backwash water, et cetera, and tie into the source, so we started learning then about the capacity issues and things that were going on. But even in reviewing the sections as they came, had no idea about, any letter, you know, that they had to stop at 550, where we thought they were continuing on to the 800 that had been approved.
Well, this letter was sent to the developer, right?
Well, probably Morrow too, I would assume back then.
Yeah. Who was the letter sent to, Bruce?
The village.
This
In the
wasn't,
village.
Bruce, this wasn't just somebody sent a letter. There's 150 people here. I mean, this was a huge deal back in the day. I remember these hearings. Everybody was here that was involved with this stuff. So this wasn't just, a side little letter that was sent out. This was a negotiated, Morrow, don't do this. Do not annex it. This was a huge deal. So everybody keeps, there's some mysterious letter. No, this was all in public. This is a big deal. So
And that very well could. All I'm saying is, we were not aware, and it's my
Well, yeah,
understanding.
but you
that-
see, the developer was sent the letter, and the city was, or the village was sent the letter, and even if they had somebody who forgot about it, they all were responsible to know about it. And then they should have been responsible to tell you about it, too.
I wish we would have known about it too, because it's something we would have brought up to the village. The interesting thing through all of this that Mary Allen also brought up was that the developer did, I guess, back in 2006, was it, Dave? 2006. 2006 did contract with the MH&T to provide a study for solutions. Dave led that. At that time, he was with the MH&T. Very coincidental. Just learned of that connection within the last few months. But I think Dave's going to talk a little bit with regards to that, whether it makes a difference to the board, if the board's interested in hearing that. But the developer hired his firm at that time to perform this study to look at, the ability for Morrow, for the Woodlands to be able to reach that 800 number and exceed that 500 number.
Well, wait. I thought you didn't know about the 500 number.
Well, he did this is going back 2006.
So this person knew about the 500 number.
Well, he worked on the study in 2006. He's been with us a year since he left another firm. And again, it could have been I guess it was a big deal. We weren't working there. At that time, we weren't down there to, really be aware our work was in other places. Because we didn't start till 2008. And so, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Thanks. My name is Dave Paizola again. This was kind of interesting that it's kind of like been a time warp to what I'm hearing today and what I heard back in 2006 area. Quite frankly, when I turned that report in, I left the firm within a couple weeks after that. So I'm missing what may have happened after that report was turned in and what the basis of it was. I have a background primarily in this type of work, sewer system analysis, development design. So this is all part and parcel to some of the issues that I think that are going on here. Also, currently and I'm well acquainted with Chris from my work experience as well, and working with Renaker and Tunis in the past. So I worked quite a bit with Warren County over the years before I left back then, and I went into a whole different area and did not work back in this area for a long time. And I retired in 2018, as Sean mentioned, and I'm doing some part-time work now. So, and as far as this development, I've been doing some reviews on the drainage design of the various subsections that have been coming out, 4C and 4D, which were the last two. I have relevant experience in residential development, as I mentioned. The county has currently looked at pump station upgrades and other things that need to go onto this system. This system, to me, is extremely unique. It's been very resilient to typical I&I problems. It doesn't overflow. I don't know where the water goes. It's got a lot of maintenance problems in it that need to be looked at. Force mains that are probably, if they were cleaned, the capacity of the system would increase dramatically. I've read the recent report, and it's pretty extensive on what's being looked at. These are just questions I'm having as an engineer looking at it. Is this really necessary to do some of that? And I'm kind of anxious to sit down with Chris and catch up a little bit on what some of the assumptions were. But the system is very unique. It doesn't overflow. It's been growing. You would anticipate to have a lot of I&I and overflows. We're not seeing that. So I'm not sure what is going on. It's a bit of an enigma from an engineering perspective. One of the things that we had looked at in that report, and quite frankly, I did not remember putting that report out in 2006 until I looked at it again. So it's a little bit of deja vu and going back and catching up. But pumping capacity seemed to be an issue. Force main is a problem. I see one of the things that they want to do in the recent studies that Black and Veatch did is to get out and clean these force mains. I'm wondering how much more capacity you may get in this system rather having to build new. There may be some new things that might have to happen because of age, but like I say, I would question a little bit of some of the conclusions that I see that are being recommended from an engineering perspective about the system.
Well, what are you questioning?
Pardon me?
What are you questioning in terms of recommendations?
I have to apologize. I caught a virus in my ear, and I've got about 30% hearing capability right now, so I missed what you said.
Okay. You said you're questioning some of the suggested fixes, and I was asking you, what are you questioning?
I'm just some of the conclusions that came out of that report. Just from things that I knew, I would just want to sit down if I got involved with it, just to ask what some of the assumptions and what some of the findings that were made. They may be correct. I don't know, but they're very extensive. And typically, one of the things I question is some of the investigative work like SSES to go in and determine where leaks are at in the system. Some things to me seemed a little bit out of order. Flow metering is a tremendous asset in determining where problems are in the system. Right now, it's talked about being later in, if some of this work is implemented. I would see that be something you'd want to do first because you'd want to be able to target where you're looking in the system. So these are just me as an engineer looking at this, at what is out there right now. And those are some of the questions I would have.
But you're saying there's a problem with the system?
Oh, yeah, there
Okay,
is.
I mean, I don't want to get into the technical
No, I know,
engineering
but
stuff, but you're saying, you agree, there's a problem with the system?
Yeah, the only thing is, it's not as severe as I think it may be played up to be, because the system's not showing overflows. EPA hasn't created any actions on you. So that's some of the things that are confusing to me, why some of the recommendations are what they are and what they were based on. So this is just an engineer's opinion and looking at what they saw out in the system and what they're recommending. So at this point, I think from my perspective, I'm here as a resource. Like I said, I'm familiar with the development, and that's pretty much the comments I have going forward. And if you have any other questions, I'd be glad to address them.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone else here wishing to? Okay.
What Dave said, because a couple of things here. One, that he's correct about the actual overflows, because we've never seen, as much as time as we spend there, have never seen any sanitary overflows. It's all model-based data, which good model, going to give you good data, but I go back and look at how many models they ran on COVID, and some of those are way out there. But anyway, the point being is that we want to support whatever the board here does, as well as support the development. We know what it did for the village and what it's continued to do. And if there are ways that we can contribute as well, we're willing to do that, because we've always had a good rapport with Chris and the department and done lots of work with them. And just because, there's an issue there that's not the village's per se ownership-wise, there may be some ways that we can assist him and the county and, trying to solve the problem long-term. That's
Thank you. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak on this matter? Chris, do you have anything else you want to add? I think I understood your request of us is to provide some direction moving forward. Is that correct?
I mean, I can go through the last couple of slides that has the requests, or I can talk to, I think Mary Allen mentioned a concept that we had discussed with her yesterday. I can provide you with some details of that concept, which is kind of a mitigation issue. The idea that maybe there's some work that they can do to line some sewers, and by lining some sewers, you would reduce the inflow and infiltration along the sewer line, and that would offset inflow and infiltration that would come from their future developments. That was the concept that we threw out there yesterday, and we kind of threw out a project that the developer could build, could construct, they could pay for it, and then that, that would reduce the inflow to offset the inflow that would come from their proposed.
That's a pump station?
No, that's lining of sewers.
So lining of our sewer lines.
Let me throw you the concept. So this is a map of the collection system. This is the Woodlands Amaro down this section here. So this is the whole development. It extends down further for the area that needs to be developed still, for plans to be developed. This is the Todd's Fork Lift Station. So when Woodlands Amaro initially, when the Woodlands Amaro initially went into effect, Joe Allen and built the trunk sewer along Todd's Fork, and then came back around, and this is when, so this is the trunk sewer, a 12-inch trunk sewer that's roughly 2,200 feet long. So what we suggested is if this project does move forward, if you allow them to continue construction, then we would recommend that this section of sewer be lined to try to reduce the inflow and infiltration. This area is located within the 100-year floodplain. It floods quite frequently to the point where the road here and these manholes are underwater. This is just a concept that we threw out. The project cost is somewhere around $160,000 to line that sewer. Our suggestion is that we would put in for an OPWC grant, for a 50% matching grant, so that would reduce the cost down to somewhere around $85,000, $90,000, and that the developer would pay for that, with the idea that that would reduce inflow and infiltration into the sewer line that heads to the pump station, and the amount that the inflow and infiltration would reduce would potentially offset the inflow and infiltration from their additional 200 and some homes. So that was the concept we threw out. I can run through the recommendations we had and the actions that we're asking the board to consider, if that would be helpful. So these are the potential steps forward. Some of these we're actually taking right now and underway. When it comes to the infrastructure, there's a sanitary sewer study of the Morrow service area. That's the study that we completed with Black and Veatch, with the flow monitoring and the hydraulic model and the recommended improvements. So we finished that up this past year when we presented the findings back in December. We purchased the property at 100 Hazen Avenue, and that's the location for the future pump station expansion. Right now, we're under contract with Outdoor Enterprises. They're a contractor that will be installing some improvements on our force main to clean the force main. That's going to happen this summer. That force main will be cleaned, and we'll figure out whether we can gain any additional capacity out of that force main. We're going to do sanitary sewer collection repairs for the next couple years, going into the collection system, trying to tighten up the collection system. And then sometime in the future, probably around 2028, we'll do additional flow monitoring. After that, we'll update our model, and then with the updated model, we'll come back with hopefully better idea of some of the improvements to drive down that construction cost. So this is a concept we presented to Ohio EPA back in the fall, and they are fine with this approach.
Okay, but you're asking us at some point to finance this through adopting a $6,000, tap-in fee basically for the sewer system for the Morrow area only.
That's the finance recommendation that you see, Commissioner Grossman, adopting a $6,000 fee that would be on top of
Versus the current, an additional
an additional
$6,000.
$6,000,
What's the current fee?
$4,800.
So you're more than doubling it.
Well, when the tap-in fee is 48, and then the non-participant fee is $1,500. So this current fee averages around $6,300 per home.
So
right
it's
now.
an additional roughly $1,500. It's not an
No,
additional.
so I misspoke. The tap-in fee is $4,800, and then we have a fee out there, another $1,500 that goes on top of that 48. So the connection fee, when a builder wants to build out here, they're coming to us and paying us on average around $6,300.
You're saying that's gonna go to 12,000.
So that would go to 12,000. So.
Okay, well, that's big.
So so in the slide here, you see an additional $4,000 to $6,000 per home could generate fees of somewhere between $2.1 to $3.1 million.
Well, why is it
At-
justified to
at
put
build
that
outs.
burden on those new homes? And I agree with the gentleman that spoke about how this puts them at a competitive disadvantage with other areas. If you make it this localized fee, and this is a big jump. So what justifies this? Is the additional capacity that they bring in justifying this almost a doubling of the tap-in rate?
So I like Joe's idea. I mean, let's put it on all the customers, because then, I generate more money. I mean, but that really is, the capacity fee, putting it on, the concept is that those monies that generated by the builders on this location would be funneled into projects at this location. That's the concept. Now, if the board wants to expand that to across the whole county, that's, that's something that, maybe the prosecutor should provide guidance on.
Well,
And
I
you may,
guess-
and you may do so.
Yeah.
You may do so.
I guess where, they're basically paying, if I understand this correctly, if there's $6,300 per home that they're already paying for the sewer system, and then paying another $6,000 towards the sewer system, and that $6,000 is 2.1 to 3.1. They're basically contributing then around $6 million of what you're saying over a long period of time is a $20 million build. That seems disproportionate to me to what they are contributing. And so that's the thing that I'm trying to really understand is what is it that this additional capacity is contributing to this challenge? Because you can't, they've already paid for 585. I mean, I suspect there's 35. Maybe there's something with that 35 you can do as I don't know if there's any legal ability to do it, but they've already paid the $6,000 on 550 or 585 lots, so they've been contributing to it. Now this additional, they're contributing to it. Is that proportional to what they are putting through there then?
So, I understand your concern. The door is closing on this development. You only have so many more lots. We're not asking them to pay for the full improvements. You know, we're not asking them to pay $20 million, you know.
No, but what I guess
So,
what I'm
I guess
asking
the
is a
question is,
$6 million.
What is a fair amount?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Like-
that's the question. What is that magnitude? You know, what should that fee be? Should it be 2,000, 4,000, 6,000, and how do you decide that?
Yeah, that's my
That's-
question.
And I don't have an answer for that. It's, you don't want to saddle the development. You know, you don't want to try to put the full cost on that, because then it would be $20,000 in additional fees. So that's a judgment call, is what is fair, what is reasonable.
And fair is very subjective.
Sure.
Especially in this situation, because I would not argue for the tens of thousands of other customers that this should be their problem. Is just my philosophy, and I would argue against that. But there's a couple of issues. Number one is fixing the current infrastructure that is there, correct? That is our system. We collect fees on that. That is a public obligation. If it is leaking, if it is not acting the way it should act, no matter what the circumstances of who paid for what back in the 80s, we need to fix that. So I think that is a fact. You're saying that we do have a schedule of trying to fix the current infrastructure that's there, correct?
Yes, we have a plan.
So that is a fact. It is also a fact that there are hundreds of approved platted lots that are coming, there is no restriction. There are hundreds of lots coming that are going to tie into this, correct?
A couple hundred, yes. Yes.
I mean, just with that, and then any other randoms outside of the woodland. So those are facts. Then my question would be, if we improve or fix, I think I used the term, the current infrastructure to cut down on seepage or leakage or whatever it is that's coming in and adversely affecting the system, will that add capacity to the system? Does that make it more efficient to where the size of the pipe or whatever it is? Yeah, we can add not just a few hundred more or a couple hundred or whatever it is more that's coming by default that we have no ability to restrict right now. Or does that actually now fix the system enough to where, well, wait, it's not just a couple of hundred homes in, there's an additional 250 homes at the Woodlands that want to get onto the system. Will that then allow for, it's not a couple hundred, it's 500 additional homes? And when this whole thing was designed and done, it was, I believe, there was almost 1,000 customers with the capacity for an additional 500, right?
That was the initial design, yes.
And now we're saying, we've blown past that, and we're definitely gonna blow past that at the risk of really saying, yeah, let's let another 500 in. It's our responsibility. Since we have sewers out there and a political subdivision has approved this zoning, it's our responsibility to do that. I don't think it is. So then that's going to do what to that system? So if those are the two facts, then number one, we need to fix the infrastructure, and we're doing that. And you've already got a plan, and I think we already purchased property. We are full steam ahead with fixing our system and some of the, we don't want raw sewage in the streets of Morrow, backing up through manhole covers, as you described it, flowing into storm sewers, which flows directly into, eventually, the Little Miami River. We don't want that. Ohio EPA doesn't want that. So, we're trying to fix current issue. We know there's at least a couple of hundred more houses coming, which I think would probably deteriorate that situation and adversely affect it even more. Now we're talking about, can we now also allow another 250 homes in that was told you can't come in?
So, yeah, so what you see here, the table that you see here, the total number is wrong. It's not 475. The Woodlands Mara is asking for capacity for 252 homes, all right? Hopewell Valley has 43 yet to construct, or they're in the process of finishing this spring. And then the Village of Classic Way, this is a couple months old, this is from back in December, has roughly around 180 residential. Joe, is that correct? Roughly around, plus commercial, plus the commercial property.
So it's gonna be close to 500.
So it'll be close, that's the idea, that's what's on the books right now, is a total of 500 homes.
And that's where I was saying, around 200 to 250 of those are coming. We've
Yes,
got no restriction
we have
on this.
commitments. We have commitments to developers for those. We put commitments out to the Woodlands tomorrow we need to honor those commitments.
Not the Woodlands of Mara.
No, the Classic Way, Village of
I'm sorry, did I say Woodlands tomorrow? I meant I'm sorry, the Villages of Classic Way. We need to honor those commitments we made to Joe.
So Chris, what was the rationale that you provided to the board when you asked us to agree to the purchase of that property in the area?
The rationale was, this was probably back, I forget, maybe last fall. And it was coming out of the report that Black and Veatch had, that we need to make infrastructure improvements. We need to expand that lift station. And so that was the rationale. Knowing that we needed to expand and make improvements out here, we wanted to purchase the property. Property doesn't come up for sale very often, and it was the ideal
Yeah, I
property
mean,
at
we
the
agreed
ideal
to it at the
location.
time. It seemed really prudent because the idea was that we would have to build something on that piece of property.
And we had concepts at that point in our mind about, what that would look like, a pump station or detention tank. And, in the storage tank, that was the ideal location for the storage tank. So that was the rationale behind purchasing the property.
And we'll put some nice screening around it to make it look pretty for the village.
I thought it was below ground.
The concept right now is below ground, but not everything is gonna be below ground. I mean, there's gotta be some
The Village of
infrastructure.
Morrow didn't like it because they weren't gonna generate any revenue off of it, because it'll be tax exempt. And there won't be any payroll tax, and their master plan was to have residential, multifamily type building on it. So they didn't like that. This is the same problem we had, Commissioner Young will remember, with the Village of Mainville, where they were so eager to earn additional revenue, they annexed a bunch of property, damn the consequences, and then after they had a turnover of council in that village, they called me, and I don't know why, because I don't represent them, and said, how could our council have annexed all this property all the way out to Zora Road in Hamilton Township? We can't pay for that. And this was all about, in that time period, generating revenue through some sort of either real estate tax, or if they have a payroll tax, and no one considered the consequences of it in that community. You're stuck with the consequences of it, not them.
I just don't feel particularly stuck. Now, I wasn't here 17 years ago, so I can't speak to all of that. I just see the service territory. We have acknowledgement that it requires investment. The village wants to have residential development in its community. It's been zoned that way. And the question to me is really about, it's appropriate for further sewer investment to be here. It's really a question from my point of view about who pays. And while, there are differing views here on the commission, the reason why we have sewers is for the development of our county. The village determine what kind of development they want. We get to decide, that's why we're here, when and who pays and all those sorts of things. But I sort of feel like it's in our territory and it's not working very well, so we're gonna invest a lot of money. So can we figure out how to utilize this public utility in a way that's in a balanced shared interest of everybody in the community and the county? I mean, the whole purpose of this is to develop out areas of the county and recognize that some areas are tougher to do that than others. Some areas are more costly than others, and so we create the structure to be able to do it. You know, the decision about the density has already been made, so that has been fought and done. It's just a question of, in my mind, how we exercise our public utility in a way that is admittedly subjective around fairness, but that balances all of the interests. And so, you know, I'm not sure that, and maybe I'm wrong, but I'm not sure we can get to a decision around what the answer is, like what is the balance. I think the question before us really has to be first is if there is a view by the board on whether or not we should seek a solution.
My comments would be just fundamentally, and it's not the first time, I think I fundamentally philosophically disagree with my colleagues on the role of our sewer department here, that I do not believe sewers are, quote, to develop undeveloped territory inside of the county. I don't agree with that, fundamentally. I don't think we run sewers everywhere in the county to let it rip. And I like certain parts of this county being rural. I think the citizens like certain parts of this county being rural. I don't want to see high-density housing everywhere in this county. Part two is, as Bruce alluded, this is not the first time this issue has happened, that villages or cities, they're struggling, they're trying to do what they can do, they want to provide more public service, they have an intrinsic desire to expand and bring in more taxpayers, period, end of story. So they will go and do things like zoning for 800 homes on a couple hundred acres or whatever it was. And then they make promises. And if they want to do that and fill out these promises, much like Mainville or the village of South Lebanon, then they should go do and invest and provide the public utilities to accomplish that. What they're doing is saying, we're gonna approve 1,000 stinking homes and say you can do it, and then, oh yeah, by the way, Warren County, you do it, and by the way, and if, 20 years later, you got a $20 million bill come and due. That's not fair. I fundamentally disagree with it, and I don't think that should go on every ratepayer inside of this county. So again, it's not the first time this issue has come up, and I've been different than my colleagues, but I think this is going to be a very substantial discussion about the future and what we're doing here. So again, I love my colleagues, but I just fundamentally disagree on the role of government in providing sewers everywhere in this county, unfettered growth.
Well, I think you completely mischaracterize my point of view here. I don't believe in unfettered growth. That's why we have sewer boundaries and we have rural areas in the community. When I looked at that map, it looked like a lot of subdivisions, and now we're going to have an area that is not developed potentially at all, but sits around all of this other residential development. Like, the issues are complicated. I wasn't here around, 17 years ago to speak to the annexation issue. And I agree with you that it's been inappropriate, in my view, when our political subdivisions that are supposed to be our partners make decisions unilaterally that disproportionately impact us and our residents in a negative way. I certainly agree with that. My point is, this is in the service territory, within the boundaries. We're going to make an investment anyway. I don't know what the financing mechanism is moving forward. My concern is in balancing all of the interests of our ratepayers and our taxpayers. But the suggestion that we want unfettered growth, is, I think, inappropriate and not reflective of not only my point of view, but my voting record on all of these issues that come before us. These are difficult issues. I feel in some respects that this one particular developer is in a really bad spot. And I don't think that we should disadvantage them because of decisions that were made 17 years ago.
That they were part of.
That there was a letter that merely says that they cannot build more than 500 to 550 homes until there are improvements made to the system. And Chris has been here in public session talking about improvements that needed to be made to the system, and even asked us for approval to purchase property in recognition of improvements that need to be made to the system.
Which I
So-
still don't have a clear answer on. We need to fix the system. There are 200, 250 homes coming. And if we quote-unquote fix the leakage in the system that we have now, will that allow for an additional 250 homes? Or is that yet to be determined? Or if we want to definitely go all the way up to 500 additional homes, when the system was only designed for 500 to begin with, are we gonna have to not just fix the current system, we have to replace this current system or add significant improvements all the way up to the $20 million number? I'm not clear on that.
The report that Blackmeach put out says that you need to build stuff, period. I mean, that's, to meet your existing customer base and any future customer base. It's saying if you want to keep from having overflows out in the collection system that's showing up on the model and the surcharging that we're seeing where the pump stations run continuously for days, if you want to fix that, you have to build stuff, period. You can't just go in and do point repairs.
Okay,
Point
so
repairs.
that's good. So
That's what the report says.
That's fixing it as it looks today, right?
It's fixing, the system
Fixing
you
it
gotta
as it
build
looks
stuff.
today.
You
We have
just can't-
problems today with the current utilization, right?
Yes.
And they're saying we gotta fix that. I'm saying we've gotta fix that. My question is, once we fix that, in the context of, there's an additional 50% of the design is coming in no matter what. We're already 500, over 500, and there's 250 coming. So now we're gonna be close to 800.
500. 500 is what the
It was
number
designed
is.
initially for 500. We're already
We're
going over
looking
50% because we got 250 plus another 80 that was already on it. So now we're 350 deep into a system. We're at 850 for a system that was designed for 550, right? As the world is right now.
You're saying back in the day, the initial system?
Was
you know,
designed for
back
500 according to your slide.
in 1992, is that what you're saying?
992 customers with a capacity for 500 additional homes.
That was the initial concept, yes.
But it's not
Yes,
just a concept,
back-
that's what
back-
was built.
Back in 1992.
It's not a concept, Chris, that's what
Yes.
was built, right?
Yes, back in 1992.
Okay, so now we're already 85 over that, at least. Plus, we've got a commitment for another 200 or 250. So we're gonna be, that's my point. So there's another 350 coming.
Not 85, 850 is what you're saying.
Yeah, 85 just from this development, plus another 250 from his development. So we're gonna be around 850 on a system that was designed for 500, right?
It's a little more complicated than that.
Okay, so I'm just going
It's
off
more
of your slide.
complicated than that.
So then.
You can't simplify it to that extent.
Okay, so I'm saying, yes, we need to improve that system that is in the ground right now, and the pump stations and all that, because we have serious, potentially
And that's the plan.
actionable.
That's the plan that we've shown is,
Okay.
Over a 10-year period, do flow monitoring, collection system upgrades, and then come back to do flow monitoring in 5 years, and then look at constructing improvements.
So then my question is, which I'm still not clear on, we've got this additional 350 units that are already on the system, can that system, with the improvements just to the current system, handle an additional 250 on top of that? So then we're gonna be around 1,000 on this
You're
system.
gonna have to build, no matter what, whether you, allow the 350 that you referenced in, that we've committed to, we're gonna have to build something regardless, even to accommodate them. So this is a path.
So
we have to be- we have to
that
be
comment,
more
you're
down
saying
this
we're
path.
already over capacity?
Yeah, we have to pursue down the path.
Then why would we allow people to keep tying in if it's already over capacity and it's problematic?
That's why we're here. That's why we're
Yeah,
discussing this.
In other words, another way to flip that around is, if this developer, Woodlands Amaro, comes into the sewer department, and I don't know whether they've submitted,
I need,
and asks for a permit, he cannot give it.
I can't give
Unless
it.
this board gives him direction to do so.
and that's why we're here today. I need direction, I need direction. Do I let them build? Do I not let them build? If I let them build, are there restrictions on them? If there's restrictions on them, are you gonna do any other mitigation measures? I just need to know. I need an answer.
Well,
We need,
okay, but earlier on in the conversation, I asked you what kind of money we had currently, what kind of improvements should be made, and you said you need to go back and take a look at all that and find that out. The developer is saying, I'll put in some stuff, which sounds pretty economical, to line some pipe that solves the infiltration problem for at least a certain portion of the area. And that, I'm assuming, is a big part of your fix, is trying to secure by replacing pipe, lining pipe, doing other stuff to stop the infiltration, which is apparently a big part of the problem, because the capacity problem is not on day-to-day sewer usage, if I understand what you're saying. It's on when it's raining and you have infiltration in the system that overwhelms it, right? And so then the question was, because it seems to me that we ought to be trying to fix that problem. And I don't know how much it costs to fix that problem, because you haven't told me, or when you would propose we fix that problem, and how, or over what period of time. And depending upon how we're doing that, does that accommodate the fellow that was up here that is not currently restricted? And does it allow the person who wants to expand at Woodland to go above the cap that they were previously given, that they blew through because they didn't know, and Morrow didn't know, even though they were notified? And they were responsible, in my opinion, to know. I'm not blaming you, okay? But that's just a fact. And our standpoint, regardless of what our colleagues say, I think that we actually all kind of agree on these points, which are that we're responsible to maintain a system that doesn't violate EPA standards. And right now, we're doing that. So we got to solve that problem, Chris. And then beyond that, I do believe that something in our service territory, which this is not an argument that we've had before about things that are outside our service territory, which we're not serving at all. And then there's some arguments, like what's happened with the Stotler matter, about, okay, was that granted, not granted, how's that going on? Okay, that's a whole different issue. But this is in our service territory. And we had limitations on some people in this service territory, a la Woodlands, that was not supposed to build over a certain amount, and they were so informed. And there was other people that were not. So we gotta solve those problems, and I don't think that there's really a disagreement on this board about that. And I don't know what the real plan is that you're giving to us, because I don't know how much money we've got, and whether we need to change the rate structure. I do believe that it's fair to have our whole rate system the same, and that we're all part of one system, and that people should be paying a rate that fairly pays for the whole system. And on the other hand, I think that there's an argument about if there's some special issue in a particular area that's costing money, maybe we can raise the tap-in fee. But I am struck by the doubling size as being too much. Just my impression, that's too much. And I don't know what the solution is. I'm just telling you my gut feeling about it, Chris. that I'd like to see.
That's why we put in the range, Commissioner Grossman, that, you know, between 4,000 to 6,000, you'll raise over the 700, or the homes that are left, that you would raise somewhere between $2 to $3 million.
Is that to pay for fixing the infiltration problem?
That would go into all the projects we've identified on this. So yes, it goes into this program.
Okay, so, but why should a new person
But the-
bear a inordinate burden to fix our current problem? See, that's where I have a fairness problem with that. On the other hand, to pay something because of the increase in capacity where we have to build something else, that's a different issue. And then there's a question of, okay, but should we have different tap-in fees for different areas and why?
Because these are developments that are in an area that are difficult to serve. So typically, you know, we've asked developments to pay for
And that's
those
been our historic
improvements.
position?
That's been historic improvements. So
Okay.
in this case here, you're increasing the fees for this area because they need capacity.
Yeah, but you're using that fee to correct a previous or a pre-existing problem, that is
It's-
not their problem.
It's two. It's pre-existing problem, the leaky sewers, but there's also not enough capacity.
Okay, well, I don't
So-
feel like I've got enough information from you yet, which is why I asked for information about what kind of money we have,
I mean,
when specifically. Have you actually done this for us in this presentation?
Commissioner Grossman, you know, here's the numbers that Black and Veatch is saying as far as like the fix. The fix is, you know, they're saying long-term wise, down the road, you're gonna need to build, you know, an equalization basin or a force main improvements or a pump station in the range of $26 million.
Okay, but here, I have a very specific question. I saw that. But that's a spend over what period of time?
That's a spend over, you know, whenever we budget it, you know, so hopefully we have this
Yeah,
done.
but-
And we showed the program that, you know, make improvements to the collection system, try to reduce the flow, to try to reduce this cost. So in like 2028, 2029, we will begin the design, and then over a 3-year period, we do the construction.
So Chris, I guess it's like I come back to, if we don't allow the development of 250 additional homes, do we have to construct something?
Yes, you're gonna have to build capacity
See, I just
regardless.
feel like we're going to have to construct something. The additional, we should figure out what the fair, and I grant you, it is somewhat subjective, but reasonable people should be able to figure out what 250 additional tap-ins relative to this big problem that you've been studying, that's saying with or without 250 additional tap-ins is gonna cost us a lot of money, then we should figure out a way to be able to move this forward that's fair for everyone. That's all, that's my number one point, is if you were gonna tell me if we don't allow these 250 lots to be developed, we would not have to invest around 26 million. I appreciate that we're gonna try and drive that number down, as we always try to do, to take advantage of all of the short and medium-term mitigation efforts. If you were to tell me whatever that number is, we wouldn't have to do it, then maybe it's a different position. But of all of the development that has happened in this area, some that we happen to have contracts with already because they happen to get in 6 months before or whatever, we're going to have to build anyway, and it's in our service territory. I guess I just come back to, we should do the fair thing to balance all the interests. I totally respect and feel the frustration in a lot of ways around why we end up here. But we kind of are where we are, and if we're gonna invest the money anyway, I'd like to have this partner be able to pay their fair share to it and help us figure out additional ways we can drive that cost down. I don't know that that gets you the answer you need, because I'm just one, I'm just one person, but it feels like for $26 million, we should be able to accommodate this plus all the other problems we have.
Chris, we expanded the Lower Little Miami treatment plant, I think for about the same amount for thousands of customers, if I'm not mistaken.
But that, keep in mind, that was
Right.
15 years ago.
But the point is, I normally speak Chris pretty well, and I'm not speaking it very well today. I'm not understanding you, to be honest with you. That in one breath, you are literally saying, this is no big deal unless it's a rain event, right?
This is a wet weather issue, yes. It
Oh, okay.
happens.
So
It
on
happens
one
several
hand,
times a year where,
you're telling me-
dry weather, I'm trying to be clear. Dry weather, this is not a problem.
So then,
Wet weather events, it is a problem.
then why do we have to build infrastructure for additional capacity?
Because, this happens on wet weather events. We don't have capacity during wet weather events. Dry weather
Even
events,
if
we
we
have
fix
capacity.
our current,
Even if you try to line your sewers and take out the inflow, that will not fix it all. We cannot remove enough inflow and infiltration out of our system. It's historically been shown that you cannot remove enough of that to make it so that you don't have to build this.
so why in the world would spending $160,000 on lining one pipe open up the door on a system that's already?
I'm not saying that's the solution.
But
Mr.
Chris,
Dowd.
you carry a
I'm
lot of
saying
weight
that's
with us.
mitigation. That's mitigation
When you
measures.
come and give us an idea like that, I expect you to have vetted it and to say this is reasonable or not reasonable. And to say that, oh, there's 160 grand, they'll do it. Now let's let them add an additional 200 homes because they spent 80 grand on fixing this one pipe.
That concept is a mitigation concept. It's meant to reduce the inflow and infiltration from their development to offset potential future inflow and infiltration from the
To
initial.
not make the problem
It's
that we
not to
already
make
have
it-
worse.
Not make it worse. It's not gonna solve this problem at all.
Well,
The problem's still gonna be there, but it's gonna allow you to offset some of that flow that's gonna come from that development during I&I, during rain events, to offset it with improvements that they make in the system. I'm not saying it's a solution at all. I'm saying it's.
The real solution here is,
mitigation.
Village of Morrow, you need to build your own sewer system, honestly. Or take over we'll sell you our infrastructure. You want to keep letting it rip, have high-density housing, you guys need to become your own public utility there. You're 6.5 miles away from our plant. Anytime we add capacity, it's huge, huge dollars. This was a very limited investment or fix back however long ago to serve a finite number of customers and some additional growth. And now you, not you particularly, but the village keeps wanting more and more and more high density without the ability to serve it. And then you're telling us, well, we can't pay for it, you're the sewer system, go invest another $26 million. Bruce, am I right here?
Yes, it's a valid point, but I think Morrow would tell you they could never afford to do that. Could I ask something of Chris to try to figure it? Can you go back to the slide you were just on? And Commissioner Jones had asked you a very good question about proportionality.
The 26 million.
The 26 million,
Of $26 million.
right there. So I get this, the 900,000 gallon storage tank has to do with I-9. That's gonna be down on the Hazen Avenue property. I get that. But is the Todd's Fork pump station improvement and the additional 10-inch force main, is that also just exclusively related to I&I inflow and infiltration?
Yeah, it's to pump the wet weather events. You don't need this during dry weather.
And the reason I'm asking is if you look at the letter in '04, and you can answer this for me, this was the sanitary engineer of Warren County's letter. It says there's not sufficient capacity and it will be necessary for one, a pump station to be expanded, and two, for 32,000 feet of force main to be replaced. Have either of those things happened?
No.
Okay, answer's no. And then you go to the letter that the developer wrote, Joe Allen, to the Village of Morrow, and it concedes those 2 points. And it says it is our responsibility to obtain the additional capacity at no cost to the village. So that was the developer saying, that's on our dime. And I take that to mean when Reniker told them to expand a pump station and to replace 32,000 feet of force main, that's on their dime. And that has not been done, you just said. So should that not be done before they can have any additional capacity? And I think that's one of the points you were making, Commissioner Jones, about, well, yeah, it said 550 max, but it had some limitation to it because things could be done to make it better to where you could have more than 550 lots. You're telling us today those things have not been done, and until they're done, why should the board increase or allow them to build any more homes above what they've already built?
So, I mean, Bruce, you bring up a great point. It's not been done, but at the same time, we expanded, we made commitments. We allowed, the county allowed the development in Hamilton Township. And that development would have put it over anyways, is what I'm saying. So, you know, yes, Woodlands Amara made it worse, but the Hamilton Township development, which is Classic Way, Hopewell Valley, we don't have enough capacity to serve them. If the model shows that if, you know, you took Woodlands Amara out, you still have problems. You still have problems because Bigfoot lift station that pumps into that force main. You know, that additional, I forget how much it was, 800 customers that we put online in Classic Way, Hopewell Valley, that put us over the edge too. So,
But-
you know,
But
so I'm
that's
just
on
saying that,
us.
you know.
If Mr. Preuss is right, and there wasn't a qualified condition in the RPC approval of the preliminary plan, then the county approved that. And so Village of Classic Way is different. It's apples and oranges compared to Woodlands Amaro.
That
But
may,
it is, you know, I'm sorry. It is as far as like approval, RPC process, yes, because they went through the RPC and zoning, county zoning for that.
And
or
assume
Hamilton
he's
Township.
correct, we
In
approved
this
it.
case, in this case here, Woodlands Morrow was by the Village of Morrow. You're looking at it as far as zoning wise. I'm looking at it as far as infrastructure wise. So
but I
infrastructure
guess
wise.
I would just say, Bruce, my real point is I don't necessarily read those two letters in the same way you do. I mean, I think it looks to me like we've said through the sanitary engineer, you can't go beyond this until improvements are done. He spells out specific improvements from 17 years ago, but essentially he's saying we have to improve the plan. And the developer acknowledges that improvements need to be done, they'll have to work on finding the to doing improvements, and it shouldn't cost the village anything to do that. That's how I read those two things. And so if you read it that way, I'm simply saying the condition that was put on, I use condition loosely, but the condition that was put on the developer was you can't develop more until improvements are made to the system. We are now going to make improvements to the system. And that, to me, signifies that, I mean, I guess we can talk about something that was spelled out 17 years ago, that if these specific improvements aren't done, then you can't do it. But I don't really read it that way. I read it, you know, the whole system has changed in 17 years. So it's, you know, the fact that Chris would do a study and the study would come back and say, these are the improvements that are most efficient for you to build, I think that passed the reasonableness test. But from my standpoint, the developer was on notice. They couldn't develop beyond 550 until improvements are going to be made. And we're going to make improvements. And so I'm simply saying, if we're going to make improvements, that means they're going to be able to tap in. And then that similarly means we should be looking for mitigation strategies in the short term to be, I mean, we could, I guess conceivably we could say, until 20 years from now, when this whole scheme you've outlined is completed, they can build that. But if there's some reasonableness that we can come together on around the net mitigation or what have you as a short-term solution, fine, but I just read these two non-legal acknowledgements of what's happening to be, we don't have the capacity. Until there's the capacity, we can't provide service, and we're now going to be in a position to be able to provide capacity. That's my point. It's not what it is that provides capacity, even though, granted, he spells out his solution. I don't know if that was a studied solution. I don't know if that was an approved solution. I don't know anything about that solution because I wasn't here. But we have a new solution before us.
I mean, there's also the possibility of, we're not forced under statute to go make improvements to this.
I agree with you on that.
That we can make sure that our system is operating under EPA standards. And I intend to do that. That is our responsibility. Then there is a legitimate question of, this is a unique problem to this area, and is it just the longstanding philosophical approach that this board's had, that future growth pays its own way? Which generally means expand, if our pump station or force main works adequately today, and now you add development, Z on top of everything else, and we have to expand that, development Z has to pay for the expansion. That's just simply the way it's always worked, and it's worked very well. That's not necessarily the case here. This is according to you, a subpar system that's failing to some degree, probably in no small part that we've already exceeded what it was designed to do, and we've allowed that to happen. So now, who pays for the upgrades to the system to bring it back up to the current system, not talking about any additional capacity, to that standard? Oh, well, we've got a couple of hundred more houses coming in, they should pay for a big chunk of it. Well, I don't know if I agree with that also. This is a fairly unique situation. If you're talking about adding capacity to handle this, that's a difference. Then yes, there needs to be an additional tap-in fee for everybody in this area. But if it's for the actual fixing of the system, I think the residents of that area where it's already been expanded, and the village has been in the middle of that expansion by approving these things. And again, I have a very hard philosophical approach, or justification in my mind, of telling every ratepayer in this county, you're on the hook for this. We're going to hold public hearings, open it up to the public for comment, and tell everybody in this county, your rates are going up. We have a serious problem in Morrow, and everyone's going to have an increased rate. I don't think that's right.
And we're not asking you to do that. I mean, we're not asking to adopt a 7%, 10% rate increase on.
You said you were coming this fall to talk about rates.
But
We're gonna talk
rates.
about rates, but we're gonna talk about everything, not just this area. We're gonna talk about all the other plan expansions we have, issues we have. This is just one item in our whole capital improvement project,
Is there something that can be done in the short term that accommodates the current development that has been approved, and for which there's no restrictions? The gentleman stood up in front of us and talked about how he's got plans, he wants to execute those plans, he's not limited in any way, except if we put on and double or more than double his tap-in fees, he becomes competitively disadvantaged. Then there's the other group that wants to continue. They're starting to build out. They're going over letters that they were informed of long ago, what their capacity was and what they could do. But at the same time, I've not heard from you whether they're on the short term, with what they want to do on the short term over the next year or 2 years. What do we do and spend if there's something feasible that would accommodate that current growth? And then we've got these long-term plans you're giving us, because you're doing stuff out to 2030 and stuff like that. And I still don't know whether there's a short-term thing that you're suggesting and how it's accomplished, what money we've got to accomplish it that would accommodate the plans that a current developer has that is not capped, and that another developer who is capped wants to proceed. And I really don't know the answers to those questions as to whether or not we can accommodate their short-term goals with something short-term we can do and what's the cost of it.
So, Commissioner Grossman, we lay out the plan here, moving forward. You know, these are items on the infrastructure side, that we plan on doing, moving forward. You know, we talked about cleaning the forest main, talked about, doing site repairs, televising the sewers, doing the patching, come back doing flow metering, and then in 2030, we would construct the improvements. So, you know, that's the plan moving forward. All right. As far as like development wise, you know, we're asking for, you know, financing for it, you know, but then we're also asking for imposing some restrictions on the Village of Marl. And that's what you see here. We're imposing a temporary cap of 15 homes per year, or 15 taps per year on that original Morrow area. So if Morrow comes in and says, I want to build, you know, 400, you know, apartments, we're going to tell them, they're going to have a restriction there that they can't do that. They need to be, they need to be aware of that, and they are aware that there's issues out here, and they just can't move forward with approving anything. So put them on a limited, budgeted tap-in area, tap-in fees, and this is for this whole Morrow area.
Wait a second, before we go on that, with our service territory, how do we impose upon private developers who are not so limited by previous letters to them that said you can't have this, that, or whatever, and they've made investments, and they've assumed that they can tap into our sewer system, which is our service territory, and now we say, no, you can't. You can't do that. There's only 15 tap-ins a year in this service territory. Can we do that, Bruce?
We can, if we had sort of a temporary moratorium, based on a study and based on a construction project that we were gonna do within a reasonable period of time.
You have all that. We have the study. We have the Black and Veatch
Now,
study.
but let me also say, I'm reluctant to say the same thing about Villages a Classic Way. That's different. And, at this point, the big issue to me is the Woodlands of Morrow, because that's in the village's jurisdiction. So they've got to have a final plat brought to them, and they can approve that without us having any input on that. We can send them a letter and they can ignore it. They have to issue zoning permits for houses to be built. Regardless of whatever we tell them they shouldn't do, they can do that. That is within their purview. Versus Villages of Classic Way, that was all the county, and they've been told they could do that. So
there was no conditions put on
well,
them?
I've asked planning to
Okay.
send it to me, and I haven't gotten it from them, so I don't know the answer to that for sure.
Well, I believe that I'd like more information from you. I get that, I'd like to know whether there's something that can be done that certainly accommodates the person who's not limited, and then there's something can then be done. They've already made a suggestion of them lining something so that whatever they're doing doesn't have an infiltration issue. Obviously, I like that. If there's something else they can propose, but it sounds to me like, I don't know how we do this, impose a temporary, is the temporary cap of 15 things a year? How long do you want to do that for?
Until we have the improvements constructed.
Well, when is that going to happen according to you?
It's 10 years.
10 years. I'm sure that would thrill some people in this room to no end. I'm being sarcastic, okay? I know you'd really be upset about that.
10 years is too long.
This is the original Morrow area. All right. Keep in mind, they have historically had very little development going on. Even though the village has purchased property up in that area, I'm just saying that, typically it's been 1 or 2 taps a year. That's the historical connection in that original Morrow area.
And well, what are they proposing to do per year now?
You have the village here.
They're building 40 or 50 houses a year.
That's what they
Just
said.
said.
That's
This is
Woodlands.
the original Morrow area. I'm not talking about the Woodlands, I'm not talking about Classic Way. The original service area in the old town, old portion of Morrow.
And you're saying that's just in Morrow, which would not affect him in
Would not
Hamilton?
affect Classic Way,
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'm not talking about Woodlands and Morrow, I'm talking about that core area that we serve.
Why would we not put a moratorium on potentially the greatest cause of it, which is the Woodlands?
That's what I'm asking you guys to tell me what to do. I need to know a direction forward. That's what I'm asking for. Are you gonna allow this to develop to move forward? So that's,
So your 15 tap is in an area that we haven't really even discussed today, and it isn't with these 2 developers here. The one developer, you don't have a problem with him doing his thing. The Woodlands, you're wondering about, but they have the letter that they were capped already, and that apparently we've got some enforceability with.
And you're saying that historically that area does about 1 to 2 a year.
1 to 2
So
a year.
what does the 15 per year do? Why are we doing, it just prevents a big apartment complex or something? That seems reasonable until, I don't think we could do it forever, but
and then, obviously, they need to come to us when they have a development and keep us in on the loop. So when there's a developer that comes in and wants to build something large, they need to be in correspondence with us early on. And then the other thing that we're asking, and the board, I think, has been very good about this, is knowing that this is a problem area, we need to enforce our sewer boundaries. You have properties, specifically in the Hamilton Township area that's adjacent to the developments now. You've got property owners who want to tie in.
But we've been consistently enforcing those. We've not deviated.
We
I'm
have,
asking
yeah.
that the board continue to do that. Continue to.
I think we've been
enforce that.
consistent on that advice. I think that's been our point of view.
It just, if I've come across as aggressive to my colleagues or anyone in the audience, I'm sorry. I'm very, very, it takes a lot to get me frustrated after almost 20 years of doing this. I am so frustrated by this. We said this was gonna happen tomorrow, to the Village of Morrow. We told them, don't do this. You're a rural community. There's no way you can throw 800 or 900 homes in here. There's no infrastructure, the roads, the sewer, everything. Don't do it. And now, oh, we made the promise, we did the zoning, here you go, county, 26 million bucks. Oh, and we don't really want to pay for it, we can't contribute, so just go ahead and talk about assessing everybody that's in the system. That is very frustrating to me. And I don't like anything about this. And my gut is, I like the concept of whether they do it themselves or not. We're telling, go approve all the apartment complexes you want. There's no sewer for it. So putting in a moratorium on that, I'm 100% fine with. And I think it's almost setting up in the very subjective area of fairness, which our definition of fairness, I have a feeling might even be litigated. So my definition of fairness is coming in and saying developer in Hamilton Township that was approved, platted, promised, no restrictions, I don't think they should face a moratorium. Developer who invested their private capital in it and is just going and going and going, versus a developer with, again, no disrespect, that you said it was an inherited situation. Father-in-law had done it. It's already built 585 houses. It's been a financial success. I would like to, even considering 2008 to 2010 when it fell off and it was a disaster, I'm sure, that now we're faced with not just a letter from the county to that developer, a letter from the developer, the owner back saying, we agree. We're not gonna go over this until we do this. So some sort of limit on someone that's adding 40 or 50 houses a year to this current problem and, with the service issues and the capacity issues that is coming, I think that's a reasonable step of limiting their taps.
Can I just say that when Joe died, we didn't just inherit, sorry. When Joe died, we did not just inherit a bunch of money, we inherited massive debt on this property. He had not developed in 10 years up there. He paid close to $4 million for that property. We had to pay off that land loan, and we've been doing that since then. We're still in debt on this project.
I thought you said it ripped in 2016, 17, and 18 where he was developing it.
Well, yeah, we were selling lots,
But you just said you didn't develop it for 10 years, so there were,
he started in 2004.
Right.
When the market crashed in 2006, he didn't record a plat for 10 years. He started developing again in 2017 with a contract with Ryan Homes to build houses. And those houses were selling, when it was the downturn, he was selling lots for $10,000 and $15,000. When he started back with Ryan, he was selling for $30,000. He still wasn't making money. All he was trying to do was get money together to pay his debt. And he did that. So please don't assume that we're making money here. We're still in debt. We've got, if we finish it, we'll be okay. But in any development, you've got to pay off the land. We still have what about 300,000 in common costs? We don't even know if we can build 250 houses because if you approve us to continue, we have to build a bridge. And with the construction prices, we don't know if we can even afford to do that. So there may be 100 houses that we can't even build.
well, why would you need to do or want to do that in the context of you also know that it sounds like, because it is for future capacity, that your tap-in fees are gonna go, and so your marketability of these lots is gonna go down. I don't understand it.
Because we still have debt to pay off. We're just, trying to honor my husband's life work. I'm a nurse by trade. I have a home health agency. I took care of old people. I had to learn this business in the last year of his life. And I think I've done a pretty decent job. I understand everything now.
I think you know more about force mains than I do, so I think you've done a very good job.
I do. But the point is, that's why we're doing this. We're trying to get out of debt, honor the commitment that he made to the Village of Morrow, and also honor him, It's important to me.
I appreciate that.
And I'm not even asking you to approve all 250 lots today. We know we can build the next phase. And that won't even be sold until late 2024, 25. But we have a contract with Ryan Homes that if we default on that, we lose our deposit.
How many more houses do you think realistically you could build?
If everything went our way, we would build 252 lots
Over what period of time?
over the next 5 years.
Well, that is the 840. I thought you said you couldn't, I misunderstood you then.
No, I said, we have plans, engineer plans to build these lots. But what I'm telling you is, we do not have a bid yet to cross the ravine, and that's a bridge. And that's, we think that'll cost us $200,000. If we don't have the money to do that, we're not gonna cross the bridge. We'll just do a cul-de-sac, that'll be the end of it. That'll be open space back there.
How many lots are across the bridge?
About 100, right?
So you're saying there's 250-ish, additional lots, and you're saying 150 are realistic without you going deep into your pocket to go spend a lot of extra. So there's 150 in play.
That's correct. So we take any kind of common improvements on the project, like a bridge, or like, say we would need a lift station to move sewage inside the project. Those are just examples of common improvements that we would amortize over the balance of lots that we think are even feasible. And that's typically driven by what can you sewer on the project, as well as topography challenges and things like that. So some of the phases at the end of the project have more constructability challenges than what we currently have planned for next year. So that's where we're coming from on. We might not even be able to achieve the 252 that we are seeking to.
All right. Okay, thank you.
But we could build next year. That would save us.
Right, and it is, and it, I was up here thinking, in a desperate position, we're not really allowed to stand on and pushing back on some of these cost challenges and how that could be implemented into, our project and our fees that we pay, but we do have the same challenges as far as, like for doubling the tap fees. I mean, that's a large chunk of profit, or, margin, I should say. So if we add $6,000 to a cost that's already $6,000, we're gonna feel that from our client as well, so.
Could you see the recommendations or the proposal of 3 different things we could tell you? One of them was that we notify you that you've exceeded your allowed platted lots, and that additional lots beyond Phase 4D will not be permitted until additional capacity is constructed. That's one thing we could do, according to Chris Broush. Another thing we could say to you is notify developer that they have exceeded their allowed platted lots, and that the county is imposing a temporary cap of 40 homes a year until additional capacity is constructed. Or notify the developer that they've exceeded their allowed platted lots, and the county chooses not to enforce the restriction at this time, but reserves the right at a future date. And I'm assuming that you like the 40 one best, maybe.
But I think it's.
Or maybe the last one, which is, we're not gonna do anything.
The last one, if it's up to me, but I think the second one is a concession that makes, it's very practical, because we have a contractual obligation to provide 62 lots a year to our client, which is Ryan Holmes. That's our sole client. But they haven't actually purchased that many from us. So I think that makes a lot
Well,
of
but
sense.
if we tell you you can't tap in,
Yeah, we
except
just-
40, you can tell Ryan Holmes, well, you know what, we're not breaching the contract with you because it's been made impossible
Yeah,
by what the county is telling us, and I think that Ryan will probably accommodate that,
right.
because they wanna build homes and make money, they don't wanna not build homes and make money. So, okay, but what would you do, besides the thing about the infiltration thing that you've suggested? Is there anything else you would do to help us with this?
Well, that's why I liked a lot the offsite, so making improvements to the offsite sewer. If the science supports that takes the additional flows, which is your guys' real imminent issue.
Yeah, but I'm asking you what you could do to help us to make this work for you and us. Is there anything else? You don't wanna have this big increase in tap-in fees, you've said that, I get that. You don't, but you're offering to help us line a particular pipe that will help with infiltration just related to your development. Anything else? Because we're being told that, one, you had a cap on the number of homes you could put. You guys were sent that. Morrow was sent that. You blew through it because you didn't know about it. That's what you told us today. Well, we can enforce that cap. And on the other hand, Chris Broush and company are trying to accommodate you. And they're giving us suggestions, but we gotta make improvements in this because the system itself is allowing too much infiltration during wet weather, and we've gotta do that. One way or the other, I know that this board's gonna try to solve that problem. But I don't know how quickly that can be done. And we don't wanna be outside of, in violation of EPA standards.
Yeah, I think my initial thought is, can we work through this together and continue to do so like, I guess the question I have is there constant feedback coming back that kind of hones in on how serious this issue is? I mean, we know it's a serious issue, but as you take each step, then does that put you back further in compliance, with the EPA? In which case, it could be a thing that we just maybe.
And that goes to a monitoring question of, it's not necessarily a study, but it's monitoring, which I think is reasonable, that we do this, now we're monitoring, we've gone through some rain events, has it materially affected the outcomes during a rain event? And if I wasn't mistaken, I thought Morrow was in here during a couple of these rain events talking about sewage in the village, if I'm not mistaken, that went into basements and things like that. That was several years ago, I thought.
I remember Clear Creek Township, but it could
Is that, I could be
We
mistaken.
talked about, back in December, we talked about how this area is kind of unique in that, the fact that it's in a 100-year floodplain. And so the backup occurs in areas that typically don't have basements. So that.
I thought there was some examples of it really actually happening. So again, I appreciate Commissioner Grossman's comment of asking you to do this. What I would suggest is, sounds like we're not gonna come to a decision right this second. There's a lot of things in play, but I think we have enough information to go back and render a decision, within the next week or two, would be my suggestion of table this, think about it, let Chris give us some recommendations based on the comments of the board, with more finite, specific things that Tom had asked, and what you had asked about, do we have to increase the force main if we've done these other things? And I think that was actually where you were going with it, was one of my questions of, if we've improved the service level by doing blank, and that's dramatically improved, number one, how do we know it's improved? And then, are we then still required to go do all these other major league, when you're talking about 30,000 feet of anything, that's major expense. And do we have to do that? So that would be my suggestion to our esteemed president, to table this for a week or two.
Chris, what do you think in terms of being responsive to some of the financial questions that we've asked? How much time do you need to kind of go back to your stuff?
Like I said, we had planned on bringing it forward to the board because later this year, we can move it up in the schedule, but
I don't,
it's a bigger, for us, it's just this area, Chris.
yeah, just this,
Just this area. So what we can bring to you, I think what we can bring to you is, on that timeline, with that timeline should be a cost with each event that I think we can bring to you, that can kind of outline it. I mean, just to kind of. Is that what how much detail are you wanting? Are you wanting just
I
the
wanna
specific
be
area,
able
or
to-
you wanna look at the whole picture?
I don't care about the whole picture at this juncture. I think at this juncture, we're trying to figure out how to answer your question, and to answer your ultimate question of, should we allow this? We wanna know, in your plan, what things cost out, and if there are things that, in spending those resources, does it avoid other costs down the road if we do or we don't allow this additional capacity in? That's what I'm trying to understand.
And I'm afraid that we're not gonna have those answers.
Okay, well, I
because
don't know how to answer your question then. I
Because,
honestly don't. I don't know how to answer your question.
We'll present something, we'll come back and present
I'd
So in a
appreciate
week, 2 weeks, that's what I'm trying to get at. When do I put it back on the schedule?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Can we wait until June 13th?
Can we wait 3 weeks?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be gone 2 weeks.
Okay, we need to have Bruce here.
That's fine.
There's legal issues involved with how we're dealing with this that we've gotta get right.
June 13th at 9:15?
Yep, that's fine, thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for your time.
You bet.
Okay. The issue we've all been waiting for. We're coming back. Come on, Suzanne. This is to discuss kind of where this revised contract
You guys can go. You
discussion.
don't have to, You don't have to.
Yeah, you're excused.
We made them sit through your thing. You don't have to sit through theirs.
So relative to the UTS contract amendment that the provider is requesting, though we're not contractually obligated to do, but they're requesting a revision. And in the conversation last time, it was asked if we were to get something a little more long-term, what that might look like, correct?
Yes, their original request was to increase their hourly fee by $2.50. And the last time they were here, it was the desire of the board to see what it would look like if we could lock in at a rate to continue until the end of 2024. So UTS is back today. You remember Brandon, the director, and Michael Cronin, who is the president of UTS, and they'll present their proposal.
And you just witnessed that, and you know how much I want to be nice right now. I just want to do something with you guys and make this go. Please give us something that we can like.
Sure, well, just,
And can you just state your name
sure, my
and
name is
address
Mike
for the?
Cronin. I'm the president of UTS. We're at 9900 Prince Englandale Road in Westchester.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us back. I know last time we were here, we came in front of you to kind of explain some of the things that had happened, how we were asking for a $2.50 increase, basically to pass on a wage increase to our drivers as kind of a stopgap measure. You know, I'm losing around probably, depending on the month, anywhere between 10 and 20,000 a month. So we're trying to just get through the end of this, and that was our ask. You know, the commissioners had asked us to go forth and say, okay, instead of just like this short-term fix, what if we were to do a longer fix? You know, say through the end of this term and the next term, which would be approximately 18 months through the end of 2024. I'd ask Brandon to go through and look at our costs. He's kind of going to run through that with you a little bit. Basically, the assumptions that he used to establish a budget going forward to that period to get an increased rate. You know, and we're all about being transparent to you all.
All right, so what's your suggestion?
Does that work better? Okay, so I'll let Brandon kind of run through his quick budget with our, kind of what we've come up with, you know, on our costs going forward.
Brandon Baum, 9900 Prince of Glendale. Commissioner Young, I'm not sure if you're gonna be happy with me or not, to be honest, but what I did was I wanted to just treat this as if it was like you guys were gonna bid this out in 2024 and just create the budget as if we were bidding on the RFP.
And to be clear, we use today's costs on it. We use 2022 costs on it. So if this were to be bid out for 2024, you know, those costs would be higher than this. We're just trying to be transparent on what our actual costs were, on how we can continue to go forward with this.
So, it's only 2 slides, real quick. Budget assumptions, 29,000 revenue hours, which was in our contract. That's what we're striving to get to. And that's what we think we'll get at if we can pay our drivers more, like we talked about the last few meetings. This includes 16% increase in wages, which is a $2 increase to current drivers. It includes 3 additional drivers hired at $15 an hour. We kept salaries the same, which is our manager, Rochelle, and then our 2 dispatchers. Parts and repairs, I just averaged out over our first 4 months, and then fixed costs as well. So I sent a new PowerPoint late last night. It doesn't have this in here, but basically the only change was that insurance increased for us 48% year over year, and that's where our big, that's where you'll see this number jump. Rent and utilities, we kept the same. So here's where we're at, guys. 661 in wages, 104 in salaries, 70 in parts and repairs, 249 in fixed, which is mostly insurance, and then we baked in the 5% profit margin. That gets us to 1.13 in total costs. Over 29,000 revenue hours is 39.31.
So it's approximately $6 a revenue hour or so higher than what the current rate is. And that would put us, you know, that would be aligned if we took, his charge was to say, if we took business as it looks today, you know, basically take all of our costs, what they are, divide it by the trip volume, and what does that number look like? This is what it lines out to. And to be completely transparent, you know, we did put exactly what our profit margin is in there. You know, I'm currently losing about $6 an hour is kind of where we are on it. So we want to show you what the numbers were, kind of tell you what, if we wanted to move forward with the plan for this is kind of what we looked at. I can't increase my driver's wages anymore to hire more drivers at this point to continue to increase my losses on it. We can continue through the end of the contract and it go out for bid after that. But I can't be in a position where I can continue to increase my driver's wages because we've already done that quite a bit from where we had it priced out originally.
And you're around $34 right now?
We're
$32.96.
Yeah, $32.96.
$32.96, yeah. And that was based on our original contract in 2020 with a 2.5% increase every year.
So Bruce, what, does this cause you any agita with respect to bidding? Like, I don't have a sense of, like, is this such a large increase that it triggers for you a need to rebid, or, you know, what, I'm not trying to do that, I just am asking the question of whether or not.
Ordinarily, yes, but we know the history here that no one bid this.
Wants to do it.
And, I mean, there's built-in increases in the existing contract, they're just saying they're not enough. And then Commissioner Young said, well, if we did this, can we just do it, you know, through 2024? So I'm gonna say no under the circumstances. The, you know, the practical circumstances.
So we don't have to go out for competitive bidding on this?
No, we're still good through 25. We have an
We have
option.
a contract with options that go through them.
Correct.
That's why this should work.
Correct.
Is because they have the option, and they're just saying to exercise the option. Now, the option came with the original contract increases. So the difference is, for the public who might be listening to this still, the difference is, I know some of us up here are having difficulty following this. So the difference is that we're actually changing your contract terms, which is what you want, but you wanted it over a shorter term. Now we're talking about doing it over a longer term to keep you in play, and that's where you're coming up with your current number. And how much total cost over the current contract does this, in other words, what's our increase in total cost?
So we have a cap that's 930,000 that we've never reached. So it's hard to say. I mean, I think year over year we've been around 800,000 one year, 780 one year, 830 one year, somewhere in that range.
So your current proposal wouldn't even go above the cap, to your knowledge?
Our current proposal would go above the cap, yeah.
And that's what I'm asking. How much is it going above?
Well, it would be what, 200,000? 1.13 less, 930? 98, yeah, so 150.
So we would have to increase our PO at the end of the year if it looks like we're going to exceed that, and there are funds available.
And to be fair, this is our best case scenario, right? We get all 29,000 revenue hours, we hire the drivers that we're planning to hire. And, you know, hopefully we can do more revenue hours because demand has increased, but.
But if you don't do that, the numbers will be lower.
And Suzanne, you're saying that the impetus for this is the demand is outweighing the supply of available routes with drivers because they can't hire drivers. So you're saying the public wants more rides and they're just not available because they haven't hired people because they're making a business decision not to hire them at an increased rate and cut into their margins.
Yes, there is a high demand right now, and usually people need to reserve a ride 2 days in advance. Right now, they're requesting a week in advance. The Lebanon Loop, that is a continual loop, often does not run because of this. And I think the word is out that with a long wait, people are just not calling in.
So why do we think there is a real demand then for this, if that's happening?
I think there's always been a demand.
Yeah, so, and I wanted to touch on this last time we were here, but last year, when I was running the facility, we implemented free medical rides. So every month was a diabetes month, you know, whatever, dialysis month. So anybody who was taking a ride through us, using that, you know, per month, gets a free ride. They don't have we started getting this huge influx of, older folks who had heard from their friends at, different centers, rec community centers, like, oh, what is this WCTS, Warren County Transit System? And that's when we started to see this huge demand of calls. And we had only really, at that point, we had 13, 14 drivers because that's all we needed. So then we kind of came to a hard spot where we didn't have enough drivers to support this new demand, right? Because each person's doing about 15 to 20 trips per day. So, you get 10, 15 more extra people per day.
So what was your impetus of saying, we want to give rides for free, not even collecting a fee?
It was ours.
That was a county.
That was a grant that we received from ODOT to provide free medical rides.
So that was no, is that still in place?
No, that ended at, in December.
Well, then why would we think that demand is still going to be at the same level?
I just think more people found out about the service. There was a lot of people that had no clue that this service existed. And so when we started doing that, I think it was just, demand increased. More people knew about
Did
it.
the grant, and sorry, I don't know the question, did the grant pay the riders portion of the cost where they normally pay their fee, and that's what the grant covered was their fee?
They paid for that, but also the cost of operating, so every hour, grant paid for that full hour, yes. The Regional Planning Commission has been meeting with different agencies, putting together a 5-year consolidated plan. So they've been meeting with homeless shelters and cities and courts and lots of agencies, and they're finding out that the number one issue that people are reporting is transportation, the lack of affordable transportation.
So I even went to like the YMCA at one point with one of our buses and our drivers just to meet with, it was like a senior center type meeting, and we went and talked to them all and told them about our service, stuff like that. So I think it was just kind of natural growth along with these medical rides. And I think it's a good thing in general.
So we've got three options. We can do nothing, not raise your rate, and say, let's bid it out at the end of the year, or the options or what have you, and the service level remains the same. Option 2 is increase your rate by $2 just for the remainder of 2023, and you'll hire one or a couple more people, and that will cure some of these demand issues that we think are out there, but they don't actually exist right at the moment. Because I thought you said calls volume went down a lot when you stopped the loop and things like that.
Well, that's only because of our driver shortage. I would disagree with you that the demand does exist, right?
Okay.
I mean, in a normal, in a normal state, we're able to take a call and say, hey, you can get a ride in 2 days. Right now, our scheduling system is essentially full. Today's Tuesday, so for next Tuesday, it's probably full.
Okay, fair enough. So option 1, do nothing, keep it as is. Option 2, raise it $2, $2.50, and then you'll hire a couple more people. That'll serve more individuals between now and 12/31. Or option 3 is go through 12/31 of 24 with basically a $6 increase and amend potentially what our max contract says.
And even as an option, an additional option beyond that, we are a long-term partner with the county, and we want to provide this service and continue doing it at a good value. If we already have a contract in place for 2025 and we're amending it to go through 2024, if we just put something in there to look at what the change in CPI is, we would be agreeable to even take it on through 2025. If we have a provision in there, we've had these 2.5% increases that have been way beneath what our true costs have increased. So if we have a provision or put a provision when we redo it to increase it based on the change in CPI or something like that, so our revenue and our rates track with our cost, we'd be willing to do that through the 2025 into the term as well.
Well, we already have that, but it was capped at 3%.
Right, the removal of the cap, and that's kind of where the issue's been. We've got inflation at a rate like X, and our cap is at Y. So, and I understand, whatever. I don't understand the contracting side or what the legal provisions are, but we're flexible with working with you to develop whatever the best solution for the county is.
And I want to say too, we just submitted the bid yesterday for Warren County Department of Job and Family Services, and we work really well together with them because anytime UTS has a ride that Warren County
You see, where I'm kind of now leaning is to go back to your original proposal for just this year. And then, because my fundamental problem all along is that you had a right to terminate this thing last year and then let us go out for bids. But there was only you, maybe. But I would like to know if now, given the increase in cost of the other proposal, which is going through 2024, maybe 2025, I'd rather give you your 250 this year and then say, now you're not gonna bid out the next year, you're gonna go to competitive bid, and if nobody else competitively bids, you're gonna get it for this other thing that you're giving us.
It'll be higher than this price.
Why would that be the case?
Because we base this on our we're trying to find a good middle ground. I said, take our current costs on where they were in 2022, our historical costs. We added in what the driver's rates are gonna be, and we added in what our current insurance costs are, but those are all gonna go up.
Okay, but wait a second, so here's what I think I'm really hearing you say, is that the proposal you make to go out through 2024 is going to not only be a good number for you for 2024, but it's gonna help to collect for some other losses that you're having this year, and that's why when you say to me that if we just give you what you originally asked for, which is the 250, that, and then you go to bidding, you're gonna bid at a higher number than what you're giving me now, because you wouldn't have got recompense for your loss this year.
No, I didn't say that at all.
Okay,
I said my costs
see, I'm trying to interpret what you're telling me, because, and I realize you didn't say that, okay? I get that. But what I'm trying to think of, wouldn't, even though it's maybe probable that there wouldn't be more than just you guys bidding, why is it that as a public servant, I wouldn't want to follow as closely as I can to the contract? We're gonna deviate from it by giving you the 250 this year, but then at the end of this year, you can decide whether you continue on, just like you always had that option of doing, and which you elected to do this year, and then you came in and said, I know we elected to follow this contract this year, but we don't like that. So now we want to do a special jigger on the thing. And that was always my problem with how this was done. And so I don't know how my colleagues feel about it. I'm kind of tending to go back to the 250, but if, now he's saying, he's giving us a point.
But see, the only problem, and again, I appreciate you doing that, and my only and that sounds reasonable to me. The only problem is we don't know what we don't know, and we already have a contract with you. And you're already before us saying, we can't abide by the contract, you gotta amend it. So just because we have a new contract with you, doesn't mean it's not gonna change over the next 18 months, honestly.
In fact, and we're not gonna set a precedent that next year, after we do the thing, the bigger change, they're gonna go back and say, you know what, it ain't working out for me. I want something else.
But that's kind of what just happened here, because we just renewed the contract within the last year.
I know
So-
that, David, that's my problem from the beginning with this.
Yeah.
Well, I understand and appreciate that. That's why we wanted to come at you with different options, and we want to do whatever's best for the county. I mean, if you have all those options in front of you to do whatever you'd like. The default, you don't have to do anything.
Well-
You can say, hey, guys, I understand your situation, it is what it is. You made a decision to extend this contract, you're stuck with it, and you have the ability to do that. We've come in front of you with open books to let you know what's going on, let you know the situation we're in, kind of where we cannot hire people, how that's impacting the residents of the county. We tried to do, at 250, I'm losing money no matter what. At this, I'll be okay going through the end of the next 18 months, which is what you asked me for. Either way I go, like if you do nothing, I'm gonna lose a lot of money. If you do the 250, I'm gonna lose some money. And when I go to rebid this out, because we are a long-term partner with the county, and we want to continue to be that, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say, what do my costs look like in 2024? So I'm gonna take my 2023 historical costs, I'm gonna say, how do I expect those to increase between 2023 and 2024? That's gonna be the basis for my bid going into it if we go into another contract period or bidding period. There's no way that I'm gonna agree to a cap of such low inflation that we always felt comfortable saying that, yeah, it's a lower of 3% of CPI, because CPI for the past,
It has been non-existent.
since
I
the
get it.
70s, it hasn't been there, so we always felt comfortable with that.
Thank you,
But
Joe Biden.
We're in different scenarios, so that's just kind of the reality of where we are. We wanted to present this option to you because you guys.
And how many drivers do you have out?
We have 13 drivers right now.
I mean, look, as a purely practical matter, I'm still in the same place I was before, is that from my standpoint, we have less service serving our constituents than we used to have. And I understand the reason for that. Is you can't get blood from a turnip. It's like people aren't going to work for $12, $13 an hour. And so for me, the question is, do we want to recognize that through this mid-year adjustment, because it's important to us that we restore our level of service, and with the commitment that that money passes through to drivers, that not only allows you to hire additional drivers at a higher rate, but allows you to give rate increases to the people who've been working to be able to retain that workforce. I'm in favor of doing that. I'm neither fish nor fowl on 2014, but I do believe that what's going to happen is that the costs are going to be more than the $6, or so an hour, and I wouldn't blame you for that. I think that's just the reality. And we don't have people, running to do this business based on our history. So I'd agree to the 250 and just sort of see what happens at the end of the year when you and others come back to us. I don't know what the.
And we can do a deeper dive also of, we talked about, do we do it potentially in-house? If it's $600,000 for just the driver, does your 1.1 million, that includes fuel, repairs?
It doesn't include fuel.
No, you gotta pay for fuel, but all parts and repairs and fixed costs, rent. Yeah, we have 2 in-house mechanics, 3 actually. It's all of that.
Well, we couldn't hire anybody cheaper than $12, $13, $14 an hour.
I know, yeah.
Plus for all-in benefits.
Right, and then it gets into, are they PERS, are they, government employees, all that type of stuff, which makes it a heck of a lot more expensive. But I think when we're talking about that, I just want to understand that again, is there any other options? Again, in a vacuum of, and I appreciate where you're coming from, we have one option. That the free market says you have one option. Okay, I think as stewards of the taxpayer dollars, we have to at least consider, well, okay, is the free market, is that the best deal for the taxpayer dollars, or do we bring that in-house?
Sure.
So that's my own
Yeah, well,
point.
and there may be other bidders, historically there have not, right? And it's one of those, and I think the historical price point is the reason
But you
why.
start to add.
Well, you know what, you've been so fair. I agree with both.
$6,
Let's just
yeah.
end it. We'll give you the 250 for the rest of the year and be done with it.
Okay, well, we appreciate that.
That's where I was going.
And
Alright.
so does the contract stipulate that the pass-through to labor?
That's something that I can work on with the prosecutor's office.
Okay, good.
All right, awesome. Thank you, thank you.
So is there a,
Appreciate your time.
I'll make a
Thank you
motion
so
that we
much.
increase it by 250, pass through directly to drivers.
We'll need to do an amendment to
Okay.
the
To
contract.
Okay.
They'll do a real resolution.
Okay,
okay,
Sure,
so
we'll do
you have
that next week.
direction, you'll come
Alright, very
back with
good.
with a
Thanks for
amendment.
your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your time here today.
I learned a lot about sewers.
And you know what?
I wanted to trade seats with you.
We probably should have interjected you in here, but once we get going on something, it's hard to break it
I
up.
feel invested in the city of Morrow.
Thank you, appreciate your time.
Thank you. Bruce, do you have anything new for any of us? Is there a motion to, wait, okay.
Hold up, I have
Yep.
something. There are some things on
Oh,
the
not
not
on the
consent
consent
agenda on your page. The first is to authorize the county administrator or deputy county administrator to sign application with Crum and Forster for the provision of excess cyber insurance.
So,
And yes?
The next one is to authorize the county administrator or deputy county administrator to sign I did that one. Resolution to cancel the regularly scheduled meeting of Thursday, May 25th.
yes.
And yes?
And the last thing is to acknowledge receipt of an annexation petition of 51.4419 acres to the city of Lebanon, and this is a municipality-owned property. So, that's it.
Do you have a
Motion to
motion?
adjourn.
Let's call on all the
Well,
public.
we need
Anybody
a
else?
motion to accept that.
We're just acknowledging?
annexation.
Just acknowledging
And-
receipt.
That's all,
motion
you've
There-
read it, we don't have
Yeah.
to,
Oh, we
I
don't
just
have
write
it.
it in the
Yeah.
minutes.
Oh, okay, okay.
yeah,
We're acknowledging it.
Motion to adjourn.
and yes.
Yes.
Thank you.